putting them in launch position. This will allow the commander and pilot to have access to their displays that you see just above them. This is also helpful to the astronauts who can't spend forever on your back. It's a comfortable position, I'm sure, but there are...
SpaceX seats are in the launch position.
There are concerns that, and I know this from the Artemis missions, that you can only spend so much time on your back. So with SpaceX and the late load, it's very convenient. It's a very short amount of time that they spend on their back before going up into space. And now we're getting some of those comm checks.
You can see those long giraffe legs with good view right there.
There it is. Jessica mentioning something that we saw at the beginning of the launch broadcast. If you want to scroll back and take a look at that, they have unofficial logo on their shirts. I believe they were wearing them in a press conference. They had their flight suits on, so I couldn't see underneath, but it was the same peach color that you showed, but it was basically a graphic of 3 giraffes and 1 panda, and each one of those animals was assigned one of the crew members, and Anne McClain got the panda.
The pandas are actually my favorite animal.
Yes.
From the time that I was a very small child, so I kind of like how that worked out, and certainly not short. I think she's 5'7", but there it is. There's the logo. The rest of her crew is exceptionally tall in the astronaut corps. So, when Anne stands with them, she comes off a little bit more panda-like, I would say.
So the next few milestones we should see.
Dragon, SpaceX, you are go for Section 2, suit leak check preparation.
That's right, is suit leak check. This is the second of the day.
Copies, we are go for Section 2, suit leak check prep.
So you will, after that brief initial comm check, they will suit leak check. And so you will see the suits inflate. They'll put their visors down. And then when that is complete, they'll do a full complement of communication checks with each one of the crew members. But right now it's suit leak check. So they're about to inflate. As we await this this next milestone, I want to go back to what you were talking about in the memories of being in space, and how clear are the memories of your spacewalk when you were outside the space station, dangling in essence, looking down at the planet. Did you have a moment where you were able to just take it all in, to pause?
Yeah, again, as we were talking about earlier, you have to be intentional about stealing a few of those moments for yourselves, especially when it comes to spacewalks. Spacewalks are the riskiest thing that we do. They're the most challenging, both mentally and physically. So it really does demand 100% of your focus and concentration to make sure that you are doing the right thing for the piece of hardware that you're trying to repair or replace, or whatever the task is that you're doing, and most importantly, to keep you and your partner safe. So that really demands a very, very high level of concentration. And, the astronaut mantra is always kind of echoing in your head of like, don't make a mistake, don't make a mistake. So you have to remember, you get very caught up in the task and the minutia of what you're doing.
SpaceX Dragon, Section 2, 2.9, care complete, ready for leak checks.
So there were a few moments that I did. I thought, okay, I need to look down. I need to appreciate
SpaceX
this.
copies. You are go for Section 3, suit leak check.
Please go for Section 3, suit leak check.
And one of those moments was when I was actually in the foot restraint that we have that you really secures you in one position, and I was working with one of the batteries that we had, and Christina was below me, and as I looked down, I saw the view. We were actually coming over those Patagonia ice fields that I was describing earlier, which is one of my favorite spots, and I remember seeing that and just waiting for a second and thinking, okay, wow, this is pretty extraordinary, you know. That first moment you come out of the hatch as well, when you see your boots below you and then nothing else until Earth. And that's certainly different than the way that we train in the pool, where you see the bottom of the pool always.
Right.
And that, you know, just, it's really, of course, you're moving around the Earth, but the sense of movement and motion that you have is that the Earth is spinning very quickly below you. And it's really an extraordinary feeling. I remember as well, Christina and I were under the airlock. We had a moment to had a pause, and we flew right over San Diego, where I went to graduate school. And so we took a moment there to make a shout out to all of my friends and colleagues that live there. But, you know, really easy to pick out those coastal cities because you have those landmarks. When you're looking down at the Earth and you don't have the benefit of the borders drawn on a map, a lot of times geography can be pretty challenging. So those coastal areas are the easy ones to pick out. Depending on what you're doing on a spacewalk, though, there can actually be pretty long opportunities that you have to appreciate the moment. And I was really jealous. I remember when I was inside flying the robotic arm, Luca Parmitano and Drew Morgan were doing a spacewalk to fix the AMS, the alpha magnetic spectrometer. And there was this one period of time where Luca was just riding the end of the Canadarm, the robotic arm on the space station built by the Canadian Space Agency, and he was just riding it for a very long time. He wasn't holding anything, he was just riding it and really looking off into the solar system and the universe. And if you know Luca, he's a talker, and he started getting quite philosophical as well and talking about what he saw and how he felt. And I was always very envious of that opportunity because I didn't have one of those natural lengths of downtime where you had really the opportunity to do that. But you never know. On my next flight, hopefully I'll have one of those as well.
Well, I hope so for you as well, because it just sounds spectacular. What an honor and a privilege to be able to do that. Well, it looks like we're getting some inflation, right? Whenever the helmet starts to ride up the face, means we got some pressure in there.
Yep.
Another social question for you, Jessica. Zryan Dox asks, what happens if the astronauts felt the need to scratch? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that is
Hope
a
they're not
good
listening.
question. Good question, and unfortunately, often there isn't a lot that you can do. You can see right now they're already finished up with those pressure checks, so it wasn't a very long time. You saw Kirill actually reached right in and scratched his nose, so he looked like he did have something like that.
SpaceX Dragon, suit leak check complete for nominal suits.
SpaceX copies and concurs for good suits. Additionally, at this time, I have an update on the hydraulics issue that LD briefed during the weather briefing, if you're ready to copy. All right. The hardware is healthy, but we are currently still evaluating system performance. We want to provide an update no later than T-1 hour. If additional time is needed, the final call just needs to be made prior to LES arm, but still expect an update from us no later than T-1 hour. How copy?
Good. We copy the update. We'll expect an update prior to 1 hour and understand the constraint with the LAS Army. Thank you.
So we've mentioned this at the top of the launch broadcast and another time not long after that, that the crew, SpaceX team on the ground is evaluating an issue with
Dragon
hydraulics.
SpaceX at this time. Closeout team will perform final closeout steps next to the capsule. You're go to proceed to Section 4, side hatch close, and report when ready to close the hatch.
Dragon copies. Section 4 and work.
So that applies to the team on the left, to the call out that you just heard, as they ready to close the side hatch for Dragon. But back to the brief that was just given to the Crew-10 crew regarding the hydraulics on the ground, and they are currently looking at an issue that is related to hydraulic lines or a hydraulic issue with the clamp arm that holds the Falcon 9 rocket to the transporter erector. Again, there's an issue with the hydraulics related to the clamp arms, and there you see them, and that holds the rocket to the transporter erector. They're evaluating an issue with the hydraulics in one of those clamp arms. So they're working through the data, evaluating the situation. They're going to take some more time to look at this, and told the crew that they will give them an update in about an hour, but they have to make a call on which way this will go, whether they build flight rationale to go ahead and fly, or if it's something that would require us to stand down for the day. That will be something that they are discussing right now, but they can make that final call just before the arming of the launch escape system. We just completed suit leak checks. Crew-10 is in their seats. Moving forward.
Yeah, to finish off that last question about what happens if you get an itch when you've got your visor closed.
Yes.
So different spacesuits have, different interiors. If you think about the EMU, the extravehicular mobility unit, that's the spacesuit that we use for our spacewalks on the International Space Station. There are a couple things that you can maybe use to itch a little bit if you have something on your nose or somewhere in your face. There's a Valsalva device that's actually mounted on the visor, and that helps you clear your ears when you're changing pressure. So sometimes if you have an itch, especially on your chin or nose, you can kind of wiggle your face down to clear it that way, to scratch it a little bit with that Valsalva device. You also have a little, the nipple for a camelback water reservoir. It's kind of like that, but it's mounted on the inside of our spacesuit, and you can use that to try to get at us, to scratch that itch if you have one.
One of the factors that they're looking at on launch day, of course, is the weather, and it couldn't be much better than this. 95% go, winds 12 to 17 miles per hour out of the southeast, temperature 67 degrees expected at launch time. We're in the 70s as we speak, and it has just been delightful outside. SpaceX and NASA not only look at weather at the launch site, though, but also around the world, making sure conditions are acceptable if Dragon has to splash down in the Atlantic in case of an emergency. So, of course, teams are monitoring contingency splashdown locations if the crew had to come back to Earth before docking with the space station. If this were to happen, SpaceX and NASA would coordinate with the Department of Defense and the Coast Guard to ensure crew safety upon splashdown, including ships and air assets to patrol the 10 nautical mile keep-out zone. This is, of course, to mitigate safety concerns for any boaters approaching the area. The weather brief that they got at the top of the launch broadcast was that conditions along the ascent corridor were good. They did have some winds that were teetering right on the line, but they were expecting them to go down. And how about that? What a beautiful view. A nice sailboat off in the distance, though I'm wondering if that is okay.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
Looks like it might be a violation, and I know that, that actually prevented a few, or delayed a few shuttle launches in the past, didn't it, right? Boats that were in the area that weren't supposed to be there. It did indeed.
I can tell you with a fair amount of certainty that as lovely as a day as it is to be out sailing, they are not supposed to be in that location. Now, the area is cleared by the range, so we'll wait for an update from the range to find out what the situation is there.
You know, see, there's not a cloud in the sky, so that's another nice feature for the viewing today. You know, sometimes if there are a few clouds interspersed, you lose your view for a minute or two once it gets above that cloud later. But that should not be a concern for today.
Yeah, the high pressure system that's in the area literally swept out all the moisture and storms that we had earlier in the week. We had a cold front pass through on Tuesday, or Monday rather.
Dragon SpaceX for hydraulic checks. Just giving an update that they're about to start an additional set of kinematics tests on the hydraulic system, so you may feel or hear some valves clicking, but this is expected.
Thanks for the heads up.
So SpaceX informing the crew that they will be hearing some noise as SpaceX cycles hydraulic valves. This is a situation that they are evaluating in this moment.
Dragon SpaceX closeout team is taking final steps in prep for side hatch closure. Stand by for transition to pad hatch closed. Ensure all items remain secure from now through launch.
Copy.
There you see the crew closing. You see the crew closing the hatch. But again, back to the hydraulic issue, SpaceX cycling those valves as they work an issue with some ground equipment, the hydraulic lines, and the system that feeds the clamp arms, which holds the rocket to the pad. A note about that boat that we saw earlier, there is still plenty of time to clear the range. And so I don't know this for sure, but it's possible that the boat may be getting a visit, but certainly could get out of there. There are notices that are put out called NOTAMs. They are notices to mariners and aviators in the area that lets them know that a launch will be going off this evening. And the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the 45th Space Wing, has the responsibility for the range. And of course, again, plenty of time to clear the range before liftoff. Currently sitting at T-minus 2 hours and 10 minutes and counting. You're watching live launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew-10 mission to the International Space Station. 2 hours ago, the crew made their way out of astronaut crew quarters. After they suited up, they got into their rides, drove out to the launch pad, ascended the launch tower, walked across the crew access arm and into the Dragon Endurance capsule that you see there. The Endurance spacecraft currently on its 4th flight. The flight leader in the fleet currently. The crew is now inside the capsule, and the team there at SpaceX performing some leak checks to make sure the capsule is airtight. We've been taking your social media.
MD loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground. Comm check.
MD Dragon, loud and clear.
MD loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD. Dragon, LD on countdown 1. Comm check.
LD Dragon, loud and clear.
LD loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, LD on Dragon to ground. Comm check.
LD Dragon, also loud and clear.
LD loud and clear. Dragon, SpaceX, launch configuration comm checks complete.
Turn to SpaceX Dragon. Copy.
To sort of wrap up that last question, you know, when you returned from spaceflight, some astronauts, including myself, have kind of had this feeling of aimlessness almost. You know, you've just accomplished this #1 goal that you've had, this dream you've had your entire life from the time that I was 5 years old, from my perspective. And I actually returned at the time of COVID, so it was coming back to a completely different planet. But, you know, finding, again, you know, your purpose and your mission it's probably something that most people don't think about when they think about the challenges of spaceflight.
All right, we are T-minus 2 hours and 5 minutes and counting until liftoff of NASA and SpaceX's Crew-10 mission to the International Space Station, an incredible orbiting lab, and, of course, their final destination for Crew-10. Let's take a closer look now at how we're getting help here on Earth from all of that revolutionary science and research being done up in low Earth orbit.
The International Space Station isn't just a symbol. It's a powerhouse of cutting-edge science, constantly revealing secrets that defy Earth's limitations and drive us farther into the cosmos.
Our mission is research and science. We have experiments mounted on the outside of the station that are looking at Earth. We study our own bodies and how they react to space, to weightlessness, to radiation, and that helps not only us go on further in future missions, but also helps for medical research back home. And then we study lots of different things as well, like materials, combustion, all sorts of things that help us understand life back on Earth.
Yeah!
Microgravity doesn't play by the rules, it flips them upside down, transforming how liquids flow, how flames burn, and unraveling biological mysteries before our eyes.
I saw some heart tissues beating in space and it was incredible.
Photon, we see that top one beating, looks like happy heart cells.
But we're not just along for the ride, we're explorers, diving headfirst into the challenge and harnessing the power of this unparalleled platform, just as we have been for decades. We're on a relentless quest for answers, seeking to understand the intricate workings of the human body in space and ensuring future crews stay
Uber
safe
Eats is delivering more deals so you can watch more basketball. Right now, get buy one, get one 6-piece boneless wings from Buffalo Wild Wings to get food to watch basketball. And then more food to watch more basketball. Order now, only on Uber
We're
Eats.
discovering new ways to grow crops in harsh environments, and engineering innovations to tackle Earth's greatest challenges.
We have amazing technology that allows us to recycle water and create water for us to drink. It's delicious. It's delicious.
Microgravity isn't just a curiosity. It's a game changer in the fight against diseases back on Earth, paving the way for breakthroughs benefit us all, and enabling new economic opportunities in space.
Welcome, Axiom 3 on board the International Space Station.
From our vantage point, more than 200 miles above Earth, we are not just spectators. We're gaining unprecedented insights into the world we call home, and we're sharing our findings open. We're not just achieving results today. We're sparking inspiration in future generations of embracing the power of global collaboration as we reach for the stars.
What was your favorite experiment on the International Space Station?
Toby, great question. My favorite experiment was the one that I got to eat. It was us growing chili peppers in our plant habitat.
How do we have video in those chili peppers?
And as we soar through space at 17,500 miles per hour, each moment step to unlocking the mysteries of our universe, and propelling even farther into space. So come along for the ride aboard the International Space Station.
Seeing all that footage from up at the ISS, I'm sure brings back a lot of fond memories.
Absolutely, especially as a scientist for me. I
get very excited about our role as astronauts and conducting these scientific experiments. It's so rewarding to know that really you're helping science progress, and you're the person up there as the operator or subject to gather all this valuable data for the teams. I know that for this mission we have a lot of different scientific experiments that we could mention. There are a few that will be actually Dragon. So in that phase of flight, before getting to the space station, and a few others on the space station. Starting off with those in Dragon, there's an experiment called Space Health. It's a Canadian space agency experiment where the astronauts are wearing these biomonitors. It's a wearable technology garment, namely at cardiovascular variables, so what's going on with our heart, and a lot of important factors to see what happens in microgravity. We have such a big difference in our physiological system. We don't necessarily have gravity, which is pulling our blood and body fluids down to our feet. That leads us to the second experiment called THI. This is a relatively new experiment where the astronauts that are participating will be wearing this kind of restrictive band around their thighs, and it will help reduce blood flow. So it'll help change the way that fluid shift is happening. Once you get in microgravity, you have this upward fluid shift, less blood in your legs, in your upper torso, and in your face. See that some of the astronauts, especially in the beginning when they're up there before you have compensation for that. These fluid shifts may be part of the reason why we're having problems with our eyes. Many astronauts are coming back with their vision and even some anatomical changes to the back of the eye. It's called spaceflight associated neuroocular syndrome. So this thigh cuff experiment will provide a lot of data to see if this could be used as a countermeasure to help counteract some of those effects. There's also an experiment called the immunity assay, which is a new way to monitor health with a blood sample in space. This is looking at a new assay that could be conducted instead of what we usually do is obtain a blood sample, and then we have to wait until that blood sample makes back to the ground before we can get a good look to understand what's going on there. Once they're on ISS, some of the astronauts will be participating in the Cypher study. This is a very comprehensive physiological suite. It's a multidisciplinary study looking at physiological and psychological factors, and it's 14 different studies all wrapped into one big blanket. And it's really looking at comparing and contrasting long-duration missions in the future, missions of different durations, and really comprehensive understanding of all those different physiological systems. Again, with some of the applications like we were talking about. Another experiment called Drain 2.0. This one's looking at blood flow between the heart and the brain. Uses a special neck collar to understand what's going on with those dynamics between the heart and the brain in microgravity. There are some more combustion experiments. We saw that in the video, something that we do on almost every ISS mission these days. Because, of course, even flames burn differently. We don't have convection. Air is moving differently, and that has led us to a lot of breakthroughs in understanding about how fire burns, what makes up different constituents of flame. This mission they'll be doing experiments called SOFI, and that will be looking at different models for flammability with applications space missions, and some terrestrial applications for combustion models. As you can see, you heard the astronauts talk about it in the video. We do all kinds of science from all different aspects. When you remove this elephant in the room that is gravity, this variable that's present in all experimental models forever from the beginning of time on Earth. If you remove that, who knows what results can happen. It's a really exciting place to do science.
Uber Eats is delivering more deals so you can watch more basketball. Right now, get buy one, get one 6-piece boneless wings from Buffalo Wild Wings to get food to watch basketball. And then more food to watch more basketball. Order now, only on Uber Eats.
How fluid flows inside of the body. Did you notice anything with your vision when you came in?
Well, good question. Well, yeah, I actually did have a pretty extreme So it was something that when I was on orbit, I did a lot of exams and images. So we actually have images. So we actually have a machine on board the International Space Station. So this is a machine to look at the back of our eye, to look at the back of our eye, to look at the retina, and understand really the anatomy of the eyeball, the eyeball
all of the surrounding structures. So I actually did have my only real symptom, and the only thing that has until now is that I have perfect vision. Is that I actually wore contacts or glasses before I went to space. And so one of the hallmarks of SANS is that you can have the back of the eyeball, flattening of the back of the eyeball. So this changes the refraction. My prescription was just this magic amount that was completely counteracted by this change that I had in my eyeball. So now I have 20/15 vision, and that's persisted for 5 years. Yes, I usually refer to it as the most expensive. Thank you to the taxpayers. Thank you to the taxpayers. But that is all of the other anatomical changes in my eye have returned to normal. So nobody's really concerned about the health of my eyeball, but I still have this perfect vision.
How about that? Wow. So if I go up into space, I can. So if I go up into space, lose my glasses.
Well, you know, for most people, it actually makes their vision a little bit worse, but it depends on where you start. But we'll have to look into your prescription. So we'll have to look into your same as mine. Then nearly the same as mine. Then you might have the same result.
Then I need to go to space. Forget LASIK. Really interesting, Jessica. That's really interesting that with us. Thank you for sharing that with us. We are currently T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes in counting. 55 minutes in counting. The Falcon 9 from launch pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. Currently inside Dragon Endurance. So far, Dragon Endurance. So far, they've completed their comm checks. Communicate with the teams here on the ground. With the teams here on the ground. Rotated upright. Their seats have rotated upright to their reclined launch position. That allows them to see the access. That allows them to see the access. Their display panels. Access there on the right-hand side of your screen. On the right-hand side of your screen. They've also completed their suit leak checks. They've also completed their suit leak checks. Make sure that their spacesuits are working properly. And now you see the closeout team. Making sure that side hatch has a good seal. If you've been watching us since we came on air, I'm NASA's Daryl Nail with NASA, and I mentioned that twice. Jessica Meir is here as well, providing audio commentary. We're going to expand our live coverage in a little more than an hour from now. Actually a little less than an hour from now. We'll come on and bring our SpaceX commentators, as long as our NASA commentator, in Hawthorne, California. Here's another look at the crew going into space today. The Crew-10 commander is NASA astronaut Anne McClain. She's a West Point graduate. She's a West Point graduate, U.S. Army colonel, and U.S. 204 days in space, and completed 2 spacewalks. She's a highly decorated Master Army aviator with over 2,000 flight hours. And she even played for the USA Rugby women's national team.
That's right, my classmate Anne. She's a natural leader. She's a natural leader. She is exactly where she should be, leading this crew to space today.
Your Crew-10 pilot is NASA astronaut Nichole Ayers, major and graduate of the Air Force Academy. Over 1,400 flight hours, including 200 in combat. 200 in her first space flight. This will be her first space flight as the first astronaut from NASA's 2021 class.
To add another dimension, Nichole also minored in Russian while she was at the Air Force Academy. We talked about shared language earlier. We talked about shared language earlier in literal sense as well.
Very helpful in this mission and this flight. And this flight. Communicating with her mission specialist, Kirill Peskov. Our mission specialist, JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi. He's returning to space for his second mission. A former commercial pilot, 113 days aboard the space station in 2016, and became the first Japanese astronaut to capture the Cygnus spacecraft. When he's not training, he enjoys flying, hiking, and playing the sax. And playing the sax.
When they reach the space station, Anne will hand over her commander duties to Talk. Talk will actually become the commander of the space station. And he'll be the third JAXA astronaut to serve in that role after Koichi Wakata and Aki Hoshide.
Taking advantage of his experience as a flight controller on the ground right after his first space flight. The second mission specialist is Roscosmos cosmonaut, a former airline co-pilot. This will be his first trip to the International Space Station. Trained in skydiving, scuba diving, and wilderness survival. He's ready for the challenges of space.
Kirill is always finding adventure.
Kirill is always finding adventure.
He has
on
that sort of adventurous spirit, so he's always exploring every environment he's in. Every environment he's in, even more special for him, having that natural of exploration and adventure in him when he sees the Earth for the first time from above.
A fine crew, all four of them, pilots. 2 military pilots, 2 military pilots, 2 commercial pilots. They all speak the common language of aviation. We are T-minus 1 hour and 50 minutes. T-minus 1 hour and 50 minutes liftoff of NASA's SpaceX Crew-10 mission. We have 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut inside of Dragon Endurance, inside of Dragon rockets from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The Kennedy Space Center in Florida. To the International Space Station to help maintain the orbiting lab. Once on board the International Space Station, Crew-10 will become members of Expedition 73. As Jessica wonderfully explained, they will conduct research to understand material flammability, to future spacecraft design, and study how spaceflight affects physiology and psychology aspect. The crew will also engage with students worldwide via ham radio. And they will use existing hardware with newly integrated software to test a backup lunar navigation solution for our Moon to Mars program. Yeah, just want to clarify. They will become part of Expedition 72, currently 72 on the station. And there you see some of our crew members, some of our from Crew 9. From Crew 9.
Yeah, that's right. The expeditions actually change over with the Soyuz launches. The next Soyuz launch will actually Johnny Kim's launch on April 8th with Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubritsky. That will mark the beginning of Expedition 73.
So far, we've had a pretty smooth countdown. Everything going well with the astronauts. As you can see, they are inside. Spacecraft Endurance. The spacecraft is in the launch vehicle. Good shape. The Falcon 9 rocket. Also in good shape. Also in good shape. The crew, they're ready to go. Flight controllers in Houston are also ready. The only issue that they're currently working is regarding a hydraulic system, one of the clamp arms on the transporter erector. That clamp arm helps hold down the Falcon 9 rocket before liftoff. The crew was updated about this, and SpaceX is currently working with teams from NASA. They expect an update in about a half hour. And they can make a final call on which way they're going to go prior to the escape system being armed. That happens around T-minus 45 minutes. Let's take you now inside Mission Control in Houston, where flight controllers are constantly monitoring the International Space Station and the people living on board. I believe we have Leah Cheshire. At the Johnson Space Center in Texas. Good afternoon.
That's right, and thank you, Daryl. Houston in the International Space Station, flight control space station here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. NASA's where the team continues to prepare for launch, and they are led by Flight Director Ron Spencer. Today, we will be launching the 10th rotational crew mission to the International Space Station under the agency's commercial crew program. Now, following Crew-10's arrival, the space station will have a total of 11 crew members aboard for just a few days. Crew members include the Crew 9 cadre, including NASA astronauts Nick Hay, Butch Wilmore, alongside cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. During the next few days, Crew-10 will go over handover procedures with the outgoing Crew 9. That includes a safety briefing, and then the new crew will jump right in to help advance scientific knowledge and demonstrate new technologies. After a few days of handover activities, the members of Crew 9 will prepare for their Crew-9 will prepare for their undocking and return. Those direct handovers between the crews allow for continuity of activities and help to ensure a continuous U.S. presence on the International Space Station, which, if you can believe it, we're now at 24 years ahead of Crew-9's return. Already turned over command of the space station cosmonaut Alexei Ovchin. In just a few weeks, NASA astronaut Johnny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Rizikov and Alexei Zabritsky will join the on-orbit crew. The departure of the Soyuz with NASA astronaut Don Pettit will be coming home, and that'll mark the commencement of Expedition 73, led by the new commander, Takuya Onishi, who is launching today. We are now at an hour and 45 minutes until liftoff, so I'm going to send it back to Daryl and Jessica.
Thank you very much, Leah. Appreciate the update there from Mission Control in Houston, Texas. T-minus 1 hour and 43 minutes and counting until off of NASA and SpaceX's Crew-10 mission to the International Space Station. You're looking at the members of Crew-10 on your screen from left to right. Mission Specialist Kirill Peskov. To his right. Pilot Nichole Ayers. To her right. Commander Anne McClain. Just a bit out of screen. And all the way on the right side. The right side of Commander Anne McClain. Takuya Onishi. A JAXA astronaut. Returning to space for the second time. As Crew-10 prepares to launch, they are allowed to have items with them for their roughly 4-month stay in space. A few of the things they're taking up. We asked Anne McClain. She said her crew were able to pack some personal gear to meet them on the ISS. It's going to go up on the ISS. It's going to go up SpaceX 32 in April. Some sports team shirts. She attended schools along with some holiday gifts for the crew. McClain said most importantly, she was able to pack a memento for multiple people who worked on this flight to support either her personally or her mission as a whole. The mission as a whole. And of course, she's going to bring those items back and return them to their owners after flight. They include things like pins, necklaces, and rings. For Takuya, he's taking a lot of pictures of his family, friends, and colleagues also with him. School banners, which is pretty common with the astronaut corps to take up various school and university paraphernalia. I think remember your Brown University sweatshirt.
Parted the crew arm.
SpaceX Dragon copies. SpaceX Dragon copies.
There you see the closeout crew, Jessica, making their way off the launch tower. Remember well from Crew 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Now they're going to probably proceed to one of the other towers where SpaceX Small Control Center, and they'll be able to watch from there.
How's the view out there? How's the view out there?
It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really any bad view. Watching a rocket take off around here. I think that is one of the closer viewing areas. A little bit closer than some of the other viewing sites.
The closeout crew. You missed it earlier. If you missed it earlier, is mostly SpaceX members, but it does include one member of the astronaut corps. In this case, it's Chris Birch. A NASA astronaut who was helping out. As Crew-10 launches, that means Crew-9 will return home soon. Crew-9 launched from Pad 40. Space Force Station. September 28th, back on September 28th of 2024. That was a unique flight because it was only two crew members. In order to make room for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, who flew up on a Boeing Starliner test flight, are going to be coming down. Those two open seats with Crew-9. Part of Expedition 72, along with Crew-9. Wilmore and Williams have been living and working on the space station now for over 9 months. The other two for a little over 5 months. Once Crew-10 arrives, there will be what's called a direct handover for 4 days, or what they call 2 plus 2, which is shorter than usual. And then Crew-9 will undock. Talk to us about that handover period. Why it's different this time, Jessica.
Yeah, so it depends on who is on board for the handover time. When it's a new astronaut, you have a little bit more of what we call kind of adaptation time. It really is dependent on what's happening on the space station as well, though. Particularly busy times, repairs or a lot of experiments that have to happen in the amount of hours that we have for the handover available. But we try to have certain periods where you have time to have some really handover with the existing crew up there, so they can show up there, so they can show you. We have such incredible training, on all the pieces of hardware, and some of the experimental pieces of hardware as well, but nothing really prepares you for the nuances of what the actual situation is. So it's really important to get those tips from the experienced astronauts, even for the second-time flyers like Anne, the space station is a different place when they they were on it previously. There's pieces of hardware and pieces of hardware and some different systems. Things may be done a little bit differently than when they were there before. So they'll get a lot of insight. They'll get a lot of insight into operations up there and just really kind of get used to doing things.
And that 2 + 2 is 2 travel days and 2 travel days of direct handover.
Yeah, it's 2 days of real handover where the two crews are really overlapping and overlapping time to hand over activities, and then hand over activities. Other 2 is one arrival day and one departure day, and one departure day. 2 + 2. And these handover times can be really variable. We strive to have so that we enough handover, still enough confidence in that, and still enough confidence in that previous experience before the crew departs. But we are so tied in with the ground teams now, and we also have been operating up there for so many years. This November will actually mark the 25th human presence on the International Space Station. So it is truly an incredible feat. But because of that, we've done things a lot of times now. We have done things a lot of times now. We have pretty well potted. Sometimes that handover, by our interactions we strive to maintain as much of it as we can. But sometimes activities and different different spacecraft dictate differences. And also, we aiming for this 4-day handover period, but we don't know exactly what it will end up as. Of course, we have to have good weather conditions. We have to have good weather conditions before we will undock. So in the end, we could have a slightly different than we're expecting, but we have to plan for something.
It really can vary, as you mentioned. Because splashdown weather, is a critical component before the crew can come down. And that's pretty unpredictable. They will be coming down. They will be coming down. I was talking to one of our meteorologists here at the Kennedy Space Center, and I asked, we have such wonderful weather this time of year. Is it more beneficial this time of year? Launching and doing the missions. Well, not necessarily. Winds really get kicked up this time of year. We have fronts coming through. We had one come through. We have winds today. You can see the flags blowing out there. You can see the flags blowing out there at Launch Complex 39. They're pretty tame today. Just in the team. Earlier, front first went through. We even had a tornado. In the Central Florida area. Winds are a watch item, and they will certainly be something that they will be looking at. And the Atlantic, where we have opportunities for the splashdown sites. But to the point of weather, location. They added in Tortuga, which is not far from Key West. Just to give them more options. Getting ideal weather in ideal weather. One thing you don't want is the astronauts bouncing around after they've just gotten back from space. In seas that are like, be terrible. 10 feet.
Exactly. It certainly would not be appreciated by the astronauts, but more importantly, those limits exist because of the structural components of we want to make sure that we want to make sure that make everybody in the vehicle safe when they're landing, and that's why we have those landing, and that's why we have those wind requirements, which relate also to the height of the waves.
We are currently at T-minus 1 hour and 32 minutes and counting until the Crew-10 flies to the International Space Station. We're getting ready to do a health check of the launch escape system. Of course, the launch escape system. Critical component of the Endurance spacecraft. You're looking at the crew right there. On the left, Roscosmos cosmonaut, Kirill Peskov.
Yeah, that launch escape system will be armed 2 minutes before they start loading the propellant. That's for good reason, of course, that's for good reason. Sitting now on top of this incredibly material, and that will stay armed. And that will stay armed. The escape system will stay armed. Either the ground or the crew can send that command. It has 8 Super Draco thrusters that fire in order to bring the crew to safety, and those thrusters are specific. And those thrusters are specific to the abort system. So they're only used for that abort system. Actually hear the crew can actually with very loud arm with like very loud hear the fueling of the valves, and they can hear the valves, and they can hear the flow as well of the fuel as well. There's a T handle on board that the crew can activate if they jettison themselves to safety. And we'll hear those calls. Once we have liftoff and we're getting into those different phases of abort, we'll actually hear Anne McClain make those calls and know exactly where they are. In terms of which flight phases, which areas of the flight profile they're on.
We will hear that health coming over the loops here in just about a minute, a little less than a minute.
You know, we think about these abort systems. You know, we think about these something that we never want to have to use. But when we do have the few occasions when we do use them, it's actually an incredible test. It gives us a lot of faith in these systems.
And that escape system, I was reading. Move Dragon half a mile in only 7.5 seconds. Equivalent to a peak velocity of 436 miles per hour. I imagine in training. You've got to be ready for those kind of Gs.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some centrifuge training. Yeah, we have centrifuge training in order to familiarize ourselves with that. So, for example, for me as a Soyuz flyer, we went up to about 8 Gs. That is to prepare for any nominal entry. Normal entry, from my experience, only about 4.1 Gs. Only about 4.1 Gs. Landing profile. And you're also in the Soyuz using practicing if you had to control that descent and the trajectory of that descent. You know, we talk about these abort systems, and it really reminds me of Alexei Chinin's abort in 2018, and that was on the Soyuz, of course. Again, it was of course a pretty scary moment for all of us, but in the end, wonderful testament to this is why they exist. There was a problem with the rocket. There was a problem with the rocket. 30 miles up, they went up to about 50 miles after they escaped system had fired. They experienced around 6.5 and then they came back safely to the Earth. Pretty interesting test of that. Again, not something we ever want to use, but certainly it's a very vital component to all of these launch systems.
I remember that well. Some anxious moments. And your fellow classmate from your astronaut class, McCaig was. I'm sure you got. I'm sure you got the full story on that.
I remember it very well. We were in Russia. I was training in Russia. I was there with Christina Cook as well. And we were viewing it from a small control room that we have at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. So we were paying attention to that whole launch sequence, and we started getting some indications that a little outside of the ordinary. And I'll never forget that moment when Nick was back with us at the cottages at Star City, which we lived in a very short amount of time. And I remember jumping off my bicycle, and both Christina and I ran over him, and Christina and I ran over him and just gave him the biggest hug. Just seemed so strange to see him back there when he was supposed to be leaving the planet for quite some time. For quite some time. That was just, the day prior. So here's a good shot of the crew members. They have ingressed the vehicle. They have completed the pressure checks of their spacesuits, the hatch has been closed. The hatch has been closed. So we are standing by, getting ready for the propellant load pull, which would be the next big milestone for the crew today.
Dragon SpaceX for post-ingress briefing. SpaceX for post-ingress briefing.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead. SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
Just wanted to give you a quick update. We are still discussing the hydraulic system performance. The hydraulic system performance. Kinematics test. They look nominal, but we are still in discussions and evaluating for flight readiness. System for flight readiness. Otherwise, F9 and Dragon are tracking no other issues for flight.
SpaceX Dragon, crew copies all. Thank you. Dragon, crew copies all. Thank you.
So you've just heard that update from the SpaceX They are still monitoring the hydraulics for the clamp arm system that's Falcon 9 in place. Falcon 9 still making some evaluations there. The good news is they're not tracking any other technical issues. So get to a good place with this one. And continue on toward launch today. Speaking of launches, NASA, there was a very interesting launch just last night from the Vandenberg Air Force Falcon 9 Air Force Base, and that was the Sphere X and the Sphere X and the Sphere X is a spectrophotometer that is really looking at the history of the universe, and it is using near-infrared spectrometry as a near-infrared space observatory, what's providing comprehensive all-sky survey of the near-infrared spectra of 450 million. So really cool stuff here. It's basically a telescope that's taking images of our sky, providing a map, and it will allow us to interpret the history of our skies as one of the scientists described, so that we will see what happened. We will see what happened even 1 second after, and start having a better understanding of the origins of the universe. Another system that was on board the same rocket was the Punch experiment. Was the Punch small satellites that are looking at the solar corona. So that's the outer atmosphere of the sun, and will give us a lot more insight into what is happening in that layer of atmosphere. So some really incredible scientific instruments that SpaceX launched together just last night.
Reserva con antelación con FreeNow y nos encargaremos de encontrarte un taxi que te recoja a tiempo.
Another view of the crew here, waiting patiently for their next update.
Jessica, the Dragon spacecraft to space today, and Crew-10 as we've been talking about, flight for the capsule. Since its first flight in 2021, SpaceX's Endurance Dragon has been a workhorse. Dragon has been a program, flying mission after mission, flying mission after mission. Safely carried astronauts to the International Space Station. Proved its reliability yet again, marking its third journey to orbit. In all, Endurance has flown 10 astronauts and 2 cosmonauts, 10 astronauts and 2 cosmonauts to and from the International Space Station. Crews from and it supported NASA, JAXA, and NASA, JAXA, and Roscosmos. And we are currently at 1 hour and 19 minutes until liftoff of Crew-10 on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station. 1 astronaut and 1 cosmonaut. The latest crew to fly as part of the latest crew to fly as commercial crew program. NASA commercial crew program uses private companies to transport people to and from the orbiting lab, from U.S. soil. We've had a good countdown so far. Weather countdown so far. Weather is 95% go. Almost perfect. 95% go. We do have an issue that SpaceX is looking at on the ground side. On the ground side. It has to do with the hydraulic system for one of the clamp arms. One of the clamp arms hold the Falcon 9 rocket to the transporter erector. They have been giving the crew endurance updates as they've been going along. To give them another update here soon. We know that they also let the crew know that they would be testing that hydraulic system. No danger to the crew at all. In order to test that system. Cycled those valves. So they went ahead and they're gathering data. They're gathering data and continuing to work that. They have up until launch escape system arm, which is T-minus 45 minutes to make a call. Just get inside the spacecraft. It's pretty calm inside there, as we've been seeing. The crew. But what are you feeling in a moment like this?
I think it's probably different for everybody. The commander and the pilot are probably kind of rehearsing the big things that they're going to be monitoring on those displays. I know that for me in the left seat of the Soyuz, there was quite a choreography and procedures that were following every step of the way. And so I was paying very close attention to everything that was happening on my screen. Just preparing and just follow along and do all the things that we had done in all the training and all the simulations. We are thinking about everything that's going to happen, thinking about everything that's going to happen. Earlier today, saying goodbye to our family members. Most likely, though, I would say really just concentrating on the job at hand. Really intimately connected with everything that's going on board that vehicle through all these intense simulations that we've done. So you are waiting for that next big moment and ready to do what you've been trained to do.
Good afternoon. You're watching live launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's 10th rotational flight to the International Space Station. I'm NASA's Daryl Nail, and with us is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. It's so good to have you. Jessica Meir, for the past 3 hours doing commentary. For the past 3 hours doing commentary. You're back. It's so wonderful to have you here again. And it's so wonderful to have you here again.
Thank you, Daryl. It is so wonderful to be back here. Thank you, Daryl. It is with a classmate of mine on board, my friends and colleagues from various space agencies, colleagues from various space agencies. Incredible to be playing a role in some way in sending them off on their mission.
Let's talk a little bit about your missions. Let's talk a little bit about your mission just from the past. And Christina Cook made history with the first all-women spacewalk, with the first 221st for Space Station Assembly. 221st 2 years later, Jessica served as the astronaut support person, astronaut support helping the team all the way to the launch tower. Helping the team all the way to the launch tower. More recently, she was over at Launch Pad 39B. She was over at Launch Pad 39B. Artemis II crew. She rehearsed once again Artemis II in the role of astronaut support person. But this time, astronaut support person was practicing for their mission. That crew was practicing for their mission. Looks like you were having a good time, though. Looks like you were having a good time.
You know, it's one of the best things about our job. You know, it's one of the best things about our job is serving with our buddies along the way, and knowing with our buddies along the way, prepare for their missions, playing a role, and helping them prepare for their missions, our own skill sets for whatever we might do in the future. Skill sets for whatever we might do in the future. One of the best parts I think about being an astronaut, we're just doing different things all the time. A lot of times different things all the time. A lot of fulfill are very active. The roles that we fulfill are very active. Learning how to use and practicing with the learning how to use and practicing with the space learning about onboard a Russian class. We're testing out something for an entirely new vehicle for the Artemis missions. So always fun and exciting.
And we've got some beautiful views that we've been looking at. Got some beautiful views that we've been looking at. A out there for our rockets going to be taking off. Where our rockets just after sunset. Just after sunset. 7:48 p.m. Eastern Time. At 7:48 p.m. Eastern Time. We're expecting a beautiful launch tonight. We're expecting a beautiful launch tonight. It'll be in twilight, which, as we know around here, for people who watch rocket launches, once that thing gets off the pad, it'll be a little dark on the ground. Off the pad, it'll be a little dark on the ground up high, but where the rocket will be doing its high, separation from the first stage, and see all kinds of separation from the first stage. Rocket exhaust being illuminated by the sun. Rocket exhaust being illuminated by the sun.
It will definitely be a gorgeous view. Very special lighting. It will be quite a show for everybody on the ground here in Florida. Looking forward to watching it with you.
Jessica, of course, has been gracious enough to spend the last 3 hours. Jessica, of course, has been gracious enough to spend the last 3 hours pre-launch operations and milestones. As we count down to launch of Crew-10, as we count down to launch of Crew-10 for 7:48 p.m. still holding Eastern Time. 7:48 p.m. 57 seconds for those who like to know it. 57 seconds for those who like to know it. Right down to the dot. Ready to go. Crew-10, ready to go. All right, let's check in with our team at SpaceX, who will be providing us commentary. Who will be providing us NASA commentator. How you guys doing this afternoon? How you guys doing this afternoon?
Hey, Daryl. I'm Jessie Anderson, a senior production and engineering manager here at SpaceX.
And I'm Anna Schneider with NASA Communications. And I'm Anna Schneider. We're excited to be joining you from Mission Control. We're excited to be joining you from Mission Control here in Hawthorne as we count down to liftoff of Crew-10. Of course, Crew-10 is our 10th operational mission with SpaceX, flying astronauts for long-duration missions to the International Space Station. Crew-10 will have 2 first-time flyers on board, as well as a veteran NASA astronaut, as a veteran NASA astronaut, Exploration Agency and Aeroespacial Exploration Agency or JAXA also represents 3 different space agencies with NASA, JAXA, and Roscosmos, with NASA, JAXA, and Roscosmos all represented on board.
Fly aboard the Dragon spacecraft named Endurance, which Crew-5 and Crew-7 missions. Overall, this will be Dragon's 46th visit to the space station and its 14th human space flight and its orbiting lab, which includes NASA's commercial crew program missions and private astronaut missions with Axiom Space. And over the last 3+ hours, and over the last 3+ hours, Crew-10 has been going through the detailed process of getting ready for their mission to the International Space Station. So let's go ahead and take a moment to introduce you to the crew flying today. In the commander seat is NASA astronaut Anne McClain. She's making her second trip to low Earth orbit. She's making her second trip to Washington native and U.S. Army colonel was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013 and has spent a total of 204 days in space, completing 2 space
spacewalks totaling 13 hours and 8 minutes outside of the orbiting laboratory. Next to McClain in the pilot seat is Nichole Ayers, in the pilot seat is Nichole Ayers, who was selected as a NASA Colorado native, graduated from the Colorado native, graduated from the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and is a major in the U.S. Air Force. And is a major in the U.S. Air Force. This is the first space serving as a mission specialist is JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi. Today's flight will mark Onishi's second trip to the space station, and he was selected by as an astronaut by JAXA in 2009, logging 113 days in space. Now to round it all out is Roscosmos. Kirill Peskov, also serving as a mission specialist,
Con reserva anticipada aeropuerto de Freenow, nos encargamos de encontrarte un taxi que te lleve a tiempo al aeropuerto.
Once on board the International Space Station, Crew-10 will briefly become members of Expedition 72 and then Expedition 73 in April. During their mission, they will conduct space station maintenance along with scientific research to understand material flammability, contributing to future spacecraft design, and study how spaceflight affects human physiology and psychology. The crew will also engage with students worldwide via ham radio and use existing hardware with newly integrated software to test a backup lunar navigation solution.
Now, today SpaceX has flown 56 crew members to space since the Demo 2 mission in May of 2020, almost 5 years ago. Now, coming up here at T-minus 45 minutes, we'll be listening for the team to report their readiness for propellant load with a final go poll. It continues to be a smooth countdown so far. We're looking good for an on-time liftoff at 7:48 p.m. Eastern Time from Launch Complex 39A in Florida. Now here on the ground, the teams will be staffed around the clock in mission control just behind us to monitor Dragon and the mission. Not just today, but throughout the entire mission. That's from liftoff to Crew-10's arrival at the space station, all the way through splashdown when the astronauts return back home. And on console or headset mission control, which you can see there on your screen, there are six key positions. The mission director is in charge in the room and tasked with making real-time decisions to ensure mission success. Now, the person that you may hear talking to the astronauts is the Crew Operations and Resources Engineer, which you'll hear us refer to as the core throughout the broadcast. And the four additional team members are focused on vehicle systems, including avionics, navigation and control, software, propulsion, life support, and communication with ground support teams. Now, apart from mission control, our Falcon 9 team is currently located in the Launch and Landing Control Center at Hangar X, and with less than a minute, I'm sorry, with just over an hour until launch, they are settling in for final checkouts, loading, and launch.
And NASA has its very own members as well. NASA's Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas, who have been preparing the International Space Station for Dragon's arrival. After launch today, Dragon is scheduled to dock to the International Space Station early tomorrow morning on March 13th. And the teams in Mission Control Houston recently gave their go for launch, confirming the space station is ready to receive Dragon and crew. Following liftoff, today's flight to the space station will take around 11 hours, with Dragon flying autonomously the entire way. Now docking again is targeted for 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, March 13th. And just like autopilot on a commercial aircraft, the crew always has the ability to take manual control of the spacecraft if needed.
And before all that happens, as the return turns the launch site and slows down from supersonic speeds, people in the immediate area may hear a double clap of a thunder-like sound known as a sonic boom.
Similar sonic booms like this were heard during the return and landing of the space shuttle. And sonic booms like these are one of the hallmarks of reusable systems like Falcon.
Here's what some of these returns have looked and sounded like on previous missions.
I know a lot of people excited to hear the sonic boom.
And these are provide quite a show. You're going to hear the sonic booms.
We're now at T-minus 1 hour, 4 minutes and counting down today's launch. While we wait, let's check in with NASA's Leah Johnson Space Center to see how things are shaping up at Mission Control in Houston. Leah?
Thanks, Jesse and Anna. I would love to hear one of those sonic booms in Florida, but today we are at the Mission Control Center at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. This is really NASA's hub of human spaceflight. The team here is ready for launch. The International Space Station is ready for the crew to lift off as they begin their journey to the orbiting laboratory. Now, in the home stretch of the rendezvous, NASA and SpaceX flight controllers will enter into integrated operations. This means both flight control teams will conduct a series of go polls for Dragon endurances docking to the space station. Rotation missions like Crew-10 help NASA continue to maximize the important research and technology demonstrations made possible only in the International Space Station's unique microgravity environment. The space station is critical for NASA to prepare for future commercial low Earth destinations and to understand and overcome the challenges of long-duration spaceflight necessary for a long-term presence on the moon and missions deeper into the solar system. Yes, I am talking about Mars. Now, here's a closer look at the mission and what Crew-10 will have to look forward to during their stay aboard the International Space Station.
The Crew-10 mission is going to be a rotational mission to the International Space Station. So we will launch aboard the SpaceX Dragon capsule and the Falcon 9 rocket.
I'm just enjoying the way towards the launch. Of course, I'm looking forward to the day of launch.
We are going to stay there half a year.
So the first goal of Crew-10 is to continue learning about the Dragon and the Falcon 9 rocket that we're flying on to enable SpaceX to continue their development of rockets and even private missions in the future. The other mission is to get us safely to the International Space Station so that we can crew this incredible national orbiting laboratory that we have and continue the science experiments that we have ongoing there.
One of the unique characteristics of the International Space Station is microgravity.
We get to learn how humans, plants, and other types of hardware react in a space environment and the microgravity environment.
It helps to develop all kinds of new materials, medicines, and it helps us to push our knowledge forward.
The discoveries that we make on board the International Space Station inform what we do on Earth, and it allows us to further both humankind here on Earth and get to further places in the universe. So I've often been asked why we explore, and I think it's different for everybody.
When people are born, they naturally want to explore their environment. First as babies, and then as kids, and finally as adults. That's how we expand our world, and that's how we find something new.
Every time that we make a further step, we learn something and learn how to adapt, and that is so important to humanity.
This is the main things which drive forward and helps us to survive as a species.
There are so many unknowns space, and as explorers and as we want to find what's in that unknown. For me, it's the fact that I get to be a small piece of figuring out what the unknown is, and taking that next step to get to the moon and Mars in this program.
Our ultimate goal is to go to Mars, but it's not an easy journey, and when we face a challenge, we must solve it step by step.
I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the International Space Station. We're outside of the atmosphere, and now we don't have the protection yet. What happened? How do we better prepare people, our hardware, our food, our water system for that deep space exploration? It's really important on the space station that we learn those lessons now when we're in low Earth orbit. That way we know what we need to bring with us when we go on to the Artemis program. One of the things that we do on the International Space Station is work with our international partners all across the world.
I think it's hard to overestimate the value of international cooperation in space exploration because we all know it takes much time and effort.
Space is hard. It's very challenging. It's sometimes unpredictable, and that's why I think cooperation is the key to success.
The International Space Station wouldn't be international without all of our partners, and our goal is to be a beacon of hope for all of humankind, so that people can look and say, this is what we can accomplish when we work together.
I asked Anne what she's most looking forward to, as well as Nichole. She says it's really satisfying for her to work on hardware with her hands, then get it into the Japanese airlock, and then go see it working outside in space, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is one of the perks for sure. All the different things we're doing every day, whether or not you're just being an operator or a subject for an experiment, loading up the Japanese airlock. That was one thing that we did several times during my mission, where we were deploying some small satellites via that airlock. So we did all the work of configuring them and putting them through, and we watched them shoot out in orbit around Earth. So really
pretty cool. That's neat. And Nichole says that she's looking forward to anything that has to do with fluid dynamics because she got her master's in. So looking forward to that. We got some social questions for you. You've been doing a great job for the past 4 hours answering them. Let's take a listen at this question, or rather, I will read it and you can listen as we get your expertise while looking at a beautiful shot outside at Launch Complex 39A. The question from Ox 93 is, how do you brush your teeth in space?
Well, the short answer is just like you do on Earth. But a few nuances, water behaves so differently when it's not falling down, so the surface tension is much more important. Keeps those water droplets together. So you just get a small water droplet on your toothbrush, either before or after your toothpaste. Brush your teeth just like you do on Earth. And then no sink, unfortunately. So you got to figure out what to do with anything else that's in there. Some people might swallow it. I usually would spit mine out into a small wipe or a towel. Go through a few towels per week.
I favor the latter, like you. We have another question. Let's pop it up real quick. Peter Strafronic asks, do astronauts get any music played in the capsule for launch?
Yeah, in the Soyuz we did for sure. While we had a long period, we had actually curated our own list, which contributed to Dragon. So
4.100.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
We are continuing to track hydraulic issue. We'll provide an update as we get closer to SRM. However, at this time, you are go for section 5. When ready, report go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, copy. 4.105 in work.
All right, you heard SpaceX the crew there that they are still working on the hydraulic issue for the clamp arm, building their flight rationale. They'll have an update for them. We'll find out how they're going to proceed forward. But in the meantime, they're moving with the next milestone, getting ready to...
Reserva con antelación con FreeNow y nos encargaremos de encontrarte un taxi que te recoja a tiempo.
Nearby launch viewing location.
Daryl and Jessica, you might be able to hear the crowd. You might be able to hear the crowd. Big crowd here, just off the camera over here, and they're here on the fifth floor of a nearby building that really gives an incredible view of the launch pad, just to the left of me. But yeah, let's introduce you to somebody that we have with us today. There are people across today. There are people across Florida as well as Texas, California. And one of those folks is Mike Ravenscroft. He's with NASA's commercial crew program, and he just stepped off console a few minutes ago to be able to chat with us. It's really great to have you chat with us. It's really great to have you here, Mike.
Glad to be here. Hello, Megan. I appreciate it being here. Thanks. Appreciate everything.
All right, Mike, I know. All right, Mike, I know. Mike, it says crew is go for launch. Mike, it says crew is go for launch. Why don't you talk to us about that we've been tracking? I think we just heard the decision about that.
Yeah, so the team's been really hard at it. The SpaceX and NASA team's working hard on ground hydraulics the vehicle release system. So they've been actively working this. I think we just heard talk to the crew and give them a heads up of the issue and they're still actively working that. They're still actively working that. This is a concern basically of vehicles held in place, how the vehicles held in place and when the vehicles liftoff. Teams are actively working that. And resolution soon. And continue on with
and Mike, we just said that you stepped off console. What does that mean? What is console? And yeah, what is your console? And yeah, what is your team especially particularly with this issue that's currently being worked?
So the team's looking for any issues with how the performance is. They compare it to previous history. Was there anything abnormal from when we had static fire? And so they're off actively looking at that data, looking at that SpaceX and NASA teams, between SpaceX and NASA teams, if we have a path forward and a path we can continue and get resolution.
Well, Mike, why don't we let you get back on console? Well, Mike, why don't we let you get back on console? We know that again you're actively working an issue with your teammates there, so we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.
All right, guys, let us get another update with our SpaceX counterparts and our NASA counterparts over at Hawthorne.
Falcon 9 is the first orbital class rocket capable of reflight. Together, Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have completed more than over 380 reflights.
And today, the booster will be attempting to land at landing zone 1, which is just down the coast from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This will be the second flight of the first stage booster supporting the Crew-10 mission.
Rapid reusability drastically reduces launch costs, frequency, and enables a wide array of new government, commercial, and scientific opportunities. Lowering the cost of access to space is helping take humanity's steps into the solar system, whether in interplanetary or even deep space. Because our lower government and commercial customers can launch more missions, which helps accelerate development. This also helps commercial satellite and private research customers afford to launch more projects to space, which helps stimulate innovation here on Earth. All of this to say, reusability is the key innovation that is making space more accessible for the industry as a whole. And just like the first stage of Falcon 9, the reusable Dragon spacecraft has flown people to the International Space Station 13 times. And as we mentioned earlier, today's crew will fly aboard the same Dragon that previously flew the Crew-5 and Crew-7 missions. For more than a decade, Falcon 9 has supported 45 missions to the International Space Station with our Dragon spacecraft, starting with our first cargo resupply mission, spaceflight capabilities to the U.S., and even helping launch two additional cargo missions with Northrop Grumman's
All of these missions have enabled science and research to be conducted in low Earth orbit at the International Space Station. The space station also plays a key role in enabling a robust economy in addition to supporting private astronaut missions. Commercial and marketing activities proposed by industry and is supporting commercial companies conducting research as well as conducting research as well as in-space manufacturing initiatives and aiding the development of technologies for commercial space stations. As part of these initiatives, SpaceX has supported the next generation of commercial with the launch of three private astronauts in partnership with Axiom in partnership with the fourth mission slated for the spring.
But SpaceX's drive to unlock space does not end there. In 2021, SpaceX launched Inspiration 4 on a three-day journey around Earth, and some of the footage from that mission on your screen. It was the first all-civilian mission to space, and missions like Inspiration 4, and the upcoming Flares Dawn, allow commercial astronauts to conduct research and other activities in microgravity and demonstrate new technologies while orbiting Earth. As some of you may recall, the Polaris Dawn crew reached the highest Earth orbit ever flown since the Apollo program, participated in the first extravehicular activity or Dragon wearing SpaceX developed EVA suits, and conducted 36 research studies and experiments designed to advance both human health during long-duration spaceflight. All these missions are helping set the stage for future missions to the Moon, Mars, and beyond.
And for nearly 25 years, NASA has supported low Earth orbit aboard the International Space Station, and just yesterday, over 150,000 total orbits of the Earth. Now NASA plans to transition to a new model featuring commercial space stations to ensure sustained access to low Earth orbit for microgravity. Our commercial low Earth orbit development program is using a two-phase design and development of commercial space stations, and second, enable the agency to purchase services as definitely exciting times ahead in the world of commercial space.
Very exciting. Absolutely very exciting. Back to today's mission. We are coming up on T-minus 50 minutes here, and our teams are carefully moving through the pre-flight process. A lot of preparations have brought us to this point, including a dry dress rehearsal and static fire on Sunday. A dry dress rehearsal is a practice run before launch, where all the steps are conducted except for the loading of propellants, which is why we call it dry. The integrated spacecraft in, rocket are rolled out to the pad and raised vertically, and the crew and vertically, and the teams go through their steps exactly how they would on launch day, exactly how they would on launch day, to make sure that they're ready when we do go for launch. During a static fire test, we also did earlier this week. The crew is not. Now propellants are loaded. Now propellants are loaded on the boosters are fired for a few seconds while the rocket is held down to the launch mount. The data from the static fire test and incorporated into NASA and SpaceX's decision to proceed with launch.
And all of that hard work now brings us up in our countdown. And next up in our countdown, will check in with the team for readiness, both for propellant load and for launch. As mentioned earlier, the Dragon launch team, as well as key NASA launch members, our NASA launch members are in SpaceX's hangar at SpaceX's hangar. The launch director will also check in with the Dragon mission director and NASA launch manager to make sure they're ready to move forward. Right now, the crew is on board Dragon, waiting to get the green light to stow the crew arm for launch and arm the launch escape system. Once the launch director gets the go-ahead, we should get a good view of the axis arm moving away from the spacecraft, moving away from the spacecraft. Now we're still tracking that one issue. We should hear the final decision on that before we get to that crew access arm stowage. And the range continues to be go for launch, currently monitoring the clearance area surrounding our launch pad, as well as the air launch pad, as well as the air along the flight corridor.
And the weather is also looking good so far. Weather is trending in the right direction. Weather is trending in the right direction at a less than 5% chance of violation at our target lift on time, which is great. Our teams will continue to keep an eye on the weather, and we'll have a weather briefing at about T-minus 45 minutes, which is just about 3 minutes from now.
And there on your screen, you can see a live view of Falcon 9 and Dragon at Complex 39A in Florida, just under 48 minutes away from launch. We've conducted several weather briefings leading up to this moment, T-minus 48 hours, a couple of days ago, into the most recent weather briefing a couple of hours ago. All the weather continuing to look good, as Jesse mentioned. They're currently tracking for weather. It would be on the abort corridor, but again, that looks at this moment. Again, our teams will be staffed around the clock and mission control to monitor Dragon, not just today, but through the entire mission, from liftoff to space station and all the way through space station and all the way through splashdown when the astronauts return. Coming up in about 2 minutes, we should hear that briefing around the T-45 minute and then after that, we should hopefully have a decision on the hydraulic system, whether we are go or not, whether we are go or not, and after that we will see that crew access arm begin around the T-minus 43-minute mark.
And as you mentioned, Anna, all the rest of the systems are looking really good for just working this one issue is a ground side issue. The vehicle is healthy. The crew is healthy. They're currently strapped into their seats inside of Dragon on top as we speak right now. Patiently waiting for an update.
And once Crew-10 does get to the International Space Station, they will of course have a brief handover period with Crew 9. After that handover, once weather looks good, Crew 9 will return home shortly, bringing the end of their mission. So it's a busy time as we complete these rotation transitions at the International Space Station. Now at just under T-minus 46 minutes, we should be coming up on that launch director briefing here shortly. Continuing to see a live look at 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The clear skies all around.
Dragon, LDM countdown 1.
LD Dragon, go ahead.
Take awareness, team needs a couple more minutes here. Hydraulic issue. We'll get back to you in another 4 minutes or so, and the answer.
Steady copy, thanks.
And a quick update there. Sounds like around the T-minus 41 minute mark, we'll get an update on that. The teams have been working. The teams have been working. These views are great. These views are like Daryl said. We might have a nice twilight launch over there in Florida. If anybody is in Florida, able to go outside during T0 for liftoff, you might get a really cool view of the launch tonight.
And again, that hydraulics issue that's been mentioned several times here now. The only issue being related to the hydraulics on eight clamp arms are located on the transporter erector around the second stage of Falcon 9.
We are ready to further address hydraulic release data.
And launch control is going to pause. Clock.
SpaceX Dragon, we copy all. We'll be ready with the equipment is.
Yeah, sorry about the unfortunate result today. Here in the air, back up here in the air soon.
Dragon copies off.
Dragon SpaceX, you are going to start 5.100 launch scrub.
SpaceX Dragon 5.100 launch scrub and work.
And we did just get that update. Unfortunately, we are scrubbing for today's launch. Unfortunately, due to the hydraulic ground issue that the teams have been working, this will continue to troubleshoot, and hopefully fix for the next attempt that we'll have for
and there's several other attempts where we end up, but there's another opportunity about 24 hours from now that they can potentially take that issue is addressed. That issue is addressed. From here, the crew and the team will have to begin egress steps to get the crew out of Dragon and off the launch pad and quarantine facility in Florida. Where they'll just get a little bit more time with their families.
The good part is we have not started loading propellants, so we don't need to offload any propellants. The vehicle is safe.
3 at 5.100. We'll be there. I expect that you should be standing by. I expect that you should be standing by at 3.2.
And SpaceX Dragon, we are continuing and we are ready for seat rotation.
SpaceX copies. Crew report ready for seat rotation, and 3 step into those ops. We'll report when we step into those ops.
And just some comms between the core and crew 10. They are preparing for egress. You are going to hear some procedures being called out as they egress through that egress procedure. And like we were saying, the vehicle is safe. It was a ground-side issue. It was a ground-side issue that the teams have been working. And so what we'll see coming up is the closeout team. We did have the closeout team leave the pad. They're going to come back leave the pad. They're going to come back and help the crew egress the Dragon vehicle.
And there on your screen, you can see a live look at the crew, Dragon Endurance, working through those steps, leading up to today. They did go through lots of activities, obviously ingress, which happened around 4:58 p.m. Eastern earlier today. They then completed all of the suit leak checks.
And for crew awareness, proceeding into script site safing, vehicle ECS system from vehicle ECS system.
Ready, copy.
And continuing to hear the comm between the crew operations research engineer from SpaceX aboard the Dragon Endurance. With that, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Daryl at NASA Kennedy Space Center for some additional information.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. And thank you very much, Jessica. Back here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Unfortunately, we're not going today. Jessica. The hydraulic system on the ground side, out at the launch side, 39A. 39A. This was an issue that involves one of the clamp transporter rector. The transporter rector. This is a ground issue. This is a ground issue. Rocket. Everything was fine. The spacecraft itself. This was an issue that SpaceX made the crew aware at T-4 hours. Working it, gathering data, continuing with the countdown. In hopes that they were able to have enough data to resolve the issue or get comfortable with some flight rationale. They weren't able to get to that point. I was listening in on the nets, and working this issue. They were definitely working this issue as you would expect. The teams at SpaceX and NASA, talking about information, previous launches, previous launches, data, taking into factors even the test fire. But in the end, they weren't unable to get to that point. They were comfortable launching. Launching. We stand down for today. And we look for another opportunity. At this point, though, we know that there are two opportunities coming up on Thursday and Friday, but it has yet to be seen whether the teams will take that opportunity. The teams will take that opportunity. First must resolve or get enough data in order to understand it. And then at that point, they can proceed with an opportunity. But just to make the audience aware of the opportunities that remain on Thursday. We have a launch opportunity at 7:26 p.m. Eastern Time. 7:26 p.m. Eastern Time. There is another launch opportunity. There is another launch or 24-hour turnaround. Or 24-hour and then on Friday. And then on Friday, we move generally about 20 or so minutes back, 20 or so minutes back in order to rendezvous with the International Space Station. We have a launch opportunity on Friday. 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time. As you can see on your screen, the Crew-10, is getting ready to egress. Spacecraft Endurance. This is where they will. Get out of the spacecraft. Talking about that now, which crew members will be going through. From here, as you heard, the commentators in Hawthorne, make their way down, the launch tower, vehicles, which are waiting them, along with the closeout crew, which will help back to astronaut crew quarters. For astronauts, though, Jessica, this is certainly something that is part of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talked about it earlier. Flexibility, flexibility is really the key to everything that we know that the plan is always changing. And launch scrubs are definitely a reality that we have seen over and over again happen over and over again. Way back in the shuttle era, of course, given maybe a technical issue, maybe a violation of the range, as we talked about, maybe it was a weather violation any of the contingency sites along any of the corridor as well. So lots of different reasons to abort. So lots of different reasons to abort. It does, it does. We're ready for this. This is what we train for. We know that at the end of the day, you may be lifting off, you may not be lifting off. Definitely a bummer for everyone involved. Definitely a bummer for everyone involved. We will just again do as we're trained and get ready for that next opportunity. And get ready for that next opportunity. It reminds me a little bit of an interview that recently about the mission. She was talking about the extensive experience that her crew has in regard to aviation. We talked about that several times. We talked about that several times in this broadcast. Pilots, 2 military pilots, 2 military pilots, 2 commercial pilots. And one of the things that Anne is how important it is as an operator, as a test pilot, to be humble, because your equipment will always fail in ways that you don't predict. And I think that's something that we saw here today. There were other issues, technical issues that were being worked and tracked before this mission, before every mission, wondering what's going to happen with the weather here, which can be pretty interesting and unpredictable here on the Florida coast. This was something I don't think that anyone was tracking at all. Anne and I even spoke last night. Everything's going too smoothly. I think we mentioned that this morning. Maybe we shouldn't have said that out loud. Maybe we shouldn't have said that out loud. Always something that always something that I'm sure Anne's reminding her crew right now. Hey, be humble. Hey, be humble. Today we weren't ready to launch. Today we weren't ready to launch. The answer is that we will launch. The answer is that we are ready and safe. And that's ready and safe. And that's solution when you're launching humans.
And a hint that the crew is taking it well, as you said, that we just saw moments ago appeared to use his tablet to take a selfie. So you feel like they're doing okay. Certainly what is happening right now. They were aware throughout the countdown that this could be a possibility, but they get yet another practice run getting out to the launch pad, getting into their seats and getting into their seats and preparing to go.
That's right. Another.
We're listening in as SpaceX continues to go through scrub procedures. Again, another highly detailed list of procedures to properly go about the scrub of a spacecraft launch. Coming up next is our crew egress. The crew has loosened up their seatbelts.
Crew awareness will be some additional tank venting here as you get back down to nominal tank pressures.
Copy.
From your time in the astronaut corps, what are some stories that you've heard? From astronauts that have spent time waiting for the next opportunity. Well,
there's certainly a lot of stories. There were some shuttle missions that scrubbed over and over again. You have different launch windows, different vehicles too. Sometimes it's instantaneous windows, sometimes you have a maybe you might be able to resolve a problem in time. In some ways, it could actually make the crew a little bit more relaxed. Because they've already done all of their final preparation things. All that last minute work, the last minute email, the last minute message that you want to have all of that out of the way. And hopefully that will give them a chance tomorrow to really just be able to relax, maybe just think a little bit more, philosophize a little bit more, be ready for that next attempt, without all of those must-do task list type things. So try to put a positive light on it. Maybe for their psychological state, getting ready for the next opportunity, it would actually make things a little bit more relaxing and like you said, they've gone through it all. Of course they had gone through it all. Of course they had gone all of those steps, except pretty much all of those steps, except in the dry dress previously. In the dry dress previously, but you know, when you're not training for the real deal, it's always training for the real deal. It's always feels a little bit different. Even more psychologically, even mentally prepared for the next tomorrow, or what that's tomorrow, or subsequent day.
If you're just joining us, you're watching. If you're just joining us, you're watching NASA coverage. NASA SpaceX that was scrubbed today. That was scrubbed today. 6 p.m. Eastern Time. T-minus 43 minutes. T-minus 43 minutes by NASA and SpaceX. By NASA and SpaceX, due to an issue with the hydraulic system. The hydraulic system controls a clamp on. That controls a clamp on the rocket. That holds the rocket to the launch tower. To the launch tower. And there you see Crew-10. And there you see Crew-10. Our crew from left to right. Our crew Peskov, from left to right. Nichole Ayers and McClain. Nichole Ayers and McClain. Takuya Onishi. Just spending some time chatting and talking. Of course, you know they're disappointed. They get disappointed. We're clear blue and 22. We're clear blue and 22. That means clear skies. Clear skies, beautiful weather, and you can see for 22 miles. You can see literally 22 miles. And that is the visibility today. That is the visibility setting up to be a launch perfect, not only launch opportunity, but also a launch viewing opportunity. But as is often happens in the business, in business, everything needs to be just right. And so the launch was scrubbed for today, they will look for an opportunity in the future after the issue that they had with the hydraulics. The rocket was good to go. The spacecraft was good to go. The spacecraft was good to go. Ground equipment, but something with the hydraulic system. And the hydraulic system. Keeping us on the ground for today. Keeping us on the ground for today. Just having passed through sunset. I believe we had a sunset. Now we're close. Almost sunset. Now we're close. Almost sunset as we orbit tower there. In the foreground. Starship. A future Starship launch tower marked by a C there. Chopstick arms at the bottom. In the background, you can see Launch Complex 39A in the tower. Complex 39A in the tower. The Falcon 9 rocket and spacecraft. Our crew are still sitting inside, awaiting to be egressed from the capsule. And way off in the distance, the vehicle assembly building.
You know, it's good food for thought here. Good food for thought. What I would do in this situation. What I would think about a potential future space flight. I think it's probably a good idea to have some personal ones, right? About what's going to be different, about what's going to be different in 24 hours or however long 24 hours. I didn't actually speak to Anne about that. I wonder if had anything in mind, anything planned, because the way things usually work, if you have a plan, then you won't. If you don't have a plan, then maybe in the case that we're in today, so I'll have to talk to her. So I'll have to talk to her and find out what they decided to do and what they decided to make use of that interim. I can see some astronauts possibly making a plan for You never know. I mean, if you have a plan, then you won't have to use it. If you have a plan, then you won't have to use it.
It's good to plan. It's also good for the astronauts. It's also good for to have a little downtime, as well. And the work that happens on the International Space Station, as I've heard it told, is very intense at times. It's very intense.
Yeah, the training period, especially is pretty intense. There's a lot of international travel as well, so you're pretty much always jet lagged. And it's pretty intense. You know, I think for a lot of the training that we do as astronauts, we talked about for the space station, a year and a half to 2 years in advance. In the beginning, it's usually not as time consuming, not as much travel, but not as much travel, but really things get progressively busier. Personally want it the other way around. If you think about it, everybody wants to have their training and to have their training and their exposure as close to the flight as possible. Those final months get quite busy. For Anne's crew, there was sort of an interesting lead-up. They had their very busy. They had their very originally they were supposed to launch in February. They were supposed to launch in February. really pretty exhausted. You know, they had a lot of travel. You know, they had a lot of travel. But then suddenly they had this delay. But then suddenly they had this delay. And they had this kind of built-in rest period. Then they had this kind of built-in rest period. Kind of similar that we're talking. Where I think it actually was scrub. Where I think it actually was good for their downtime because they had enough downtime. I mean, we always as astronauts want to be launching a well-rested crew, launching a well-mentally prepared crew, to get to the very busy lifestyle that we have on board the psychology that's involved with leaving your family and friends back home leaving your family and friends. I think it was nice, and so I think it was nice, and again, maybe they'll have that now. Again, maybe they'll have a little bit of extra time together, a little bit of extra time together to kind of contemplate and prepare.
That delay that you mentioned, from February, of course, brought about by the decision to switch from a brand new SpaceX capsule to Dragon Endurance. Reliable one with three previous crew missions under its belt, Crew 5, Crew 7, and Crew 7. When they made that switch, though, they do some more data analysis on spacecraft in short order and it takes time. The amount of data the commercial crew program has to go over in order to make sure that everything is right for the spacecraft, loading up the astronauts on it.
Oh, it's a nice view of the moon. You can see behind the launch towers there as well.
See it. We're pretty close to a full moon. We've got sunset in just a few minutes.
Dragon SpaceX, just an update. The closeout team is waiting. They've arrived at the pad. They've arrived at the pad to enter the pad to go. Get you enter the pad, but I'll give you updates as they're proceeding to the base of the tower.
SpaceX Dragon copy. Thank you.
You heard that update there. SpaceX to the crew inside. The crew inside the Endurance spacecraft.
For crew readiness, we need rocket from the base of the rocket.
Of course, they have to wait before the closeout crew can launch tower there because everything needs to be safe. Everything needs to be safe before you allow people go into the launch area. So these are standard precautions. That are taken. Before the closeout crew goes in. Props to our Kennedy Space Center Flight Operations team for these beautiful images that they've been bringing us throughout today. Going around the launch complex. We're able to see for 20 miles off of the distance. Pretty spectacular views. All right, we're going to send it out now to Hawthorne, California. Our commentators there and with an update on the scrub.
Thanks, Daryl. Not what we were expecting today. The good news is that the crew are all healthy. And this is standard procedure. We're hearing some comms. We're hearing some comms that the closeout team is going to make their way back to the crew access arm to the white room and help the crew egress the vehicle. Well, they've done this before. They did this through dry dress rehearsal already when they had to go through the entire process, get into the seats, get strapped in, and then the seats get strapped in, and then they unbuckled the Dragon spacecraft already. So this is just almost like another rehearsal for them. And again, we didn't load propellant, so that does make the egress a little bit easier.
Yeah, and you can see there on your screen. There on your screen, taking some selfies. It looks like, or some photos. It looks like, or some photos.
With their pads there.
Yeah, so I guess kill the time a little bit as they wait to egress or exit the spacecraft, the spacecraft to their quarantine facility, where they've been for the last about a week now. I think they arrived on March 7th to Florida. So the process is it takes a little bit. There's lots of people and there's moving parts involved to get the crew out of the capsule, to get everything safe, and then everything safe, and then drive and get back to their location. Again, continue to stand by and wait and see when we might be able to have our next launch opportunity. There's several opportunities available this week. Again, we had that scrap hydraulic ground issue with the clamp arm on the transporter erector. So the teams will continue to look into that, do some more data analysis, and see if they can exactly what was going on. With that issue. We'll continue to share more about those next launch opportunities once they're available. On the NASA side, provide updates about the launch on our mission blog, on NASA.gov, as well as on our social media accounts, on the commercial crew program side. Again, this mission, on your screen, you can see the cars. You can see the cars that will transport after they egress, have arrived standing by there. Teams are standing by there.
The closeout team waiting for the elevator that will take the elevator all the way up to that crew access arm. Again, that's the same team. That helped them ingress into the vehicle. It will be the same team to help them. Egress.
And there you can see them making their way up. And they did call the scrub right before that crew access arm normally would have swung out of the way. We didn't have to wait for that. We didn't have to wait for that to speed up the process a little bit. And that was, I think, very intentional to make a decision at that point.
Yeah, exactly. We have a lot of checkpoints through the countdown, all purposefully to make sure that we are every step of the process we are good before we proceed. And again, just like Anna was saying, this is exactly why we do that. We were able to make this call prior to propellant loading, prior to removing the crew access arm, making the steps to almost go backwards, and a little bit safer. We are doing, just making sure that we to open that hatch for Dragon.
And again, Crew-10 is the 10th rotational mission carrying crew to the International Space Station. Their crew currently inside Dragon that will egress soon is comprised of two NASA astronauts, Nichole Ayers, as well as the JAXA astronaut, Takuya Onishi, cosmonaut, Kirill Peskov. And then once we do have launch date and a launch time, and we get the crew into orbit, they will have a long duration mission at the International Space Station, research activities.
It's really great to see the crew in good spirits. They train for this. Spend a lot of hours working through each one of these procedures. And you could see the closeout team making their way across the crew access arm there over to the white room. Yeah, this is all part of procedure. It's really great to see just in good spirits, despite unfortunately not being able to launch today. But we will have some other opportunities. We will not launch unless we know that we can launch safely and reliably. And this is exactly why we do all of these checks throughout the countdown.
And really everything has to go right for a launch to be successful. We want to take the time and make sure we understand any issues that arise. Along with all of the engineering systems on the rocket and Dragon, we also have to look out for things like weather to make sure we're safe to fly and launch into orbit. So again, the teams will continue discussing the hydraulics issue, continue looking at the weather for the next few days, and see when our next launch opportunity may be. You're continuing to see a live look inside the Dragon Endurance. Again, this was going to be the fourth flight of that spacecraft that previously flew on Crew 3, Crew 5, and Crew 7. Live there at the launch complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida as the sun looks like it's pretty much fully set at this point. And there are teams continuing to go down the access arm, safely the hatch and getting ready to open it so that they can begin the egress or exit operations for the crew and get them out one by one.
Crew-10, again there on your screen, patiently waiting for that hatch to open. Once that hatch opens, they'll egress one crew member at a time. And again, they still need to follow, ensuring that we are not bringing any FOD in or into the Dragon spacecraft and the crew arm itself. So you saw the closeout scene in those closeout suits.
The equipment is in the white room. They're doing final preparations for hatch opening, expected just a few minutes from now.
I was the core speaking with the crew, just providing an update. They are inside of Dragon, so they can't see outside from the seats that they're in. So the core is just letting them know that the closeout team is inside of the crew access arm, inside of the white room, and preparing to open that hatch shortly.
And confirming those calls on the crew side is the commander for Crew-10, Anne McClain. She's in the center right of your screen. So from left to right on your screen, you have cosmonaut Peskov, NASA astronaut Nichole Ayers, NASA astronaut Anne McClain, and JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi. And that scrub was called about 45 minutes ago now. Continuing to work through those procedures to get the crew egress from the spacecraft. The launch for today was planned for 7:48 p.m. Eastern, 4:48 p.m. Pacific. And they called that scrub about 45 minutes ahead of that instantaneous launch window.
Again, if you're just now joining us, we did have a scrub for the Crew-10 launch today. Once again, the vehicle and the crew are safe and healthy. The scrub was called for a ground-side issue with the hydraulic system that opens the access arm around the vehicle which has to the not the access arm, the clamp arm on the transport erector. And the countdown is exactly what we use. This is the framework that the launch team uses to make sure that all final checks are made in the right order to make sure that we have a safe flight, safe launch. And What's happening during these countdowns is the rocket computers, the ground computers, the launch teams are all monitoring the checks along the way, making sure that every step of the way, all the way to T0, as well as all the way through launch, that everything is healthy and operating nominally. And so we were going through those procedures today. And as we were working through each one of those checks, we did notice that there was an issue with the hydraulic system on the clamp arm. And teams began to work through that, trying to see if we could resolve it in time for the expected T0 today. Unfortunately, around T-minus 45 minutes when they made the official call. Again, that was about 8 minutes before, or 10 minutes before we load onto the vehicle. And again, this is why these checks are there. This is what terminal count is for, is to make sure that the vehicle is safe, and that we can make a call in time to prevent going through unnecessary procedures as well. So again, we didn't load propellants on the vehicle. That does make this egress a little bit easier, a little bit faster for the crew.
And that clamp arm that we keep referencing, so those clamp arms are on the transporter erector that Falcon 9 is on top of, and they are located around the second stage of Falcon 9. You can see them on your screen right above the lower thirds. And they stay around the second stage of the Falcon 9 until we have the strong backtrack track, which takes place in the final minutes of the countdown around the T-minus 4.5 minute mark.
Exactly. And the purpose of the transport erector, the strong back, is we have the propellant lines, avionics, and umbilicals attached to the vehicle. It also provides support and brings the vehicle vertical for launch. And just about 4.5 minutes before T0 is when we open up those clamp arms, move the T just a couple degrees away from the vehicle to prepare for liftoff, and then at T0 the TE moves even further away to clear the way for the vehicle as it lifts off.
Y llévate el canapé completamente gratis. Sí, has oído bien. Colchón 199 euros y canapé gratis. ¿A qué estás esperando? Las unidades son limitadas. Factory Colchón, la marca blanca de los colchones.
To make sure that when we do go for launch, those clamp arms will fully open and will clear the way for the TE to be able to recline appropriately to make sure that when we do go for launch, those clamp arms will fully open and will clear the way for the TE to be able to recline appropriately for
again, it's a very active and they're getting a great area down in Florida of the launch pad. You can see some of the other launch complexes in the background as well. This one is scheduled to take place from Launch Complex launch area down in Florida. There on your screen, launches are constantly, you can see happening. This one was scheduled to take place from Launch Complex Crew-10 currently inside as they're on your screen. Those egress procedures. You can see Falcon, the SpaceX team. Again, there is a lot of coordination that went into currently inside as they work through those egress procedures. The final minutes before we scrub SpaceX team communication. Again, there is a lot of coordination that went into today's preparation, working to make sure we're all on the same page. The final minutes before we scrub to launch communication between the NASA teams, the SpaceX teams, everyone in tip-top shape, working to make sure we're all on the same page, that we're all comfortable and ready to launch. And of course, we'll launch once everything is in tip-top shape and we're ready to go fly the crew to the International Space Station.
And again, the crew has gone through these procedures many times. There's a lot of rehearsals. There's a lot of review of all the vehicle systems prior to flight, testing, simulations that the crew works through in preparation for review of all the vehicle systems prior to the International Space Station, testing, simulations that the crew works through in preparation. The crew did go through several of these before to the International Space Station. This is almost just like a second dry dress rehearsal for them. The crew did go through several of these before. When the vehicle is ready, dress rehearsal. I'm sure the crew will be ready to go. A second dry dress rehearsal for the International Space Station.
Practice makes perfect. So
when the vehicle is ready, I'm sure the crew will be ready to go.
And the crew,
excited to go to the
there you
International
can see on the right hand of your screen, they've been training for their mission to the International Space Station for well over a year now, getting ready. And the crew, for all of the different there you can see on the right hand of your screen, they've been training for their mission to the International Space Station for well over a year now, getting ready for all of the different science and maintenance activities that they will do on board once they make it to the International Space Station. Once on orbiting the International Space Station, once that handover period is complete and the weather looks good, crew 9 will return home, orbiting, splashing down on the International Space Station. Once that handover period is complete and the weather looks good, and again, this is part of the rotational crew missions that we do to the International Space Station. Bring it into their mission 6 months or so. And again, this is part of the rotational crew missions that we do to the International Space Station.
They do. So
about every 6 months or so as part of NASA's commercial crew program.
Very small portion of what they're training for. You mentioned the science that they do a lot of science experiments, and 6 months is just very long time for them to get a lot of work done of what they're training for. On the orbiting laboratory. They're preparing to do a lot of science experiments, and 6 months
celebrate its 25th year of continuous human presence this year. And in that time, there have been thousands of experiments. The International Space Station will actually celebrate its 25th year of microgravity environment in lower orbit really provides in that time environment thousands of experiments, technology demonstrations in microgravity done here on Earth. And that microgravity environment in lower orbit really provides a unique environment for science activities and research, that the crew is technology demonstrations that just can't be done here on Earth. Thermally assisted material flammability research to understand fire growth and reaction that the crew is planning to conduct, and this research could contribute to future thermally assisted material flammability tests to understand fire growth worldwide via microgravity. And researchers from that investigation recently launched related science to the moon. They'll also advise the students worldwide via ham radio systems with emerging. And researchers from that investigation recently launched related science to the moon. There on your screen themselves also serve as to bridge current navigation. So we have NASA's Human Research Program that does technologies, a multitude of different. And then the astronauts there on your studies themselves also on the crew themselves. And one of those NASA's Human Research Program that began a couple of years ago is known as CIPHER. So one of the human studies is part of that themselves, and one of those valuable insights that began a couple of years ago is known as CIPHER. A sampling of more than 200 is part of that human research study to provide valuable insights and help researchers on Earth conduct. And that's just a sampling of the more than 200 different investigations that they will participate in. And help researchers on Earth again conduct the launch of Crew-10 at the International Space Station. That crew on the right-hand side of your screen, comprised of NASA astronauts Anne McClain, the launch of Ayers, JAXA astronauts Takuya Onishi, crew on the right-hand side of your screen, Peskov that launched for today that was originally planned for 7:48 Nichole Ayers, Eastern 4:48 Onishi, PM Pacific was Scrubs Peskov that launched for today that was originally planned for 7:48 right before the crew access arm was PM Pacific was Scrubs. It was about 45 minutes left in the countdown ground issue right before the crew access related arm to the clamp arm, which is planned to there two clamp arms holding. It was the Falcon 9 rocket hydraulics ground on the launch pad for the related to the clamp arm, which clamp arms are located around holding second stage the Falcon 9 rocket in which you can see there now on the launch pad for the transporter erector. That clamp arms are located around immediately began working through of the Falcon 9, which you can see there now on your screen. Egress the crew from the spacecraft. Launch scrub was called. The teams immediately began already left the pad, so they had processes to they've since egressed to the launch pad and the spacecraft. That crew access arm that the see on your pad team had already left the pad, so the Dragon right back out at the top of they've since arrived to the launch pad and they are up in that crew access hatch around see on your screen. The Dragon endurance spacecraft once all that safety is complete. They will open the hatch so they are begin to get the crew out one by one. Hatch around back to the Dragon endurance spacecraft. Once all that safety is complete, they will open the hatch and begin to get the crew out one by one before they take them back to the crew quarters at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So leading up to today's launch attempts, the crew actually ingressed or entered the spacecrafts around 4:58 p.m. launch attempts. The crew actually ingressed or entered the spacecrafts. There you can see the ground crew team currently working on those. So several hours ago now, and opening operations. There you can see the ground crew team
SpaceX
currently working on those.
For side hatch open in just
hatch
about a minute
safing and opening operations.
Dragon SpaceX closeout team is preparing for side hatch open in just about a minute or so.
Core here in mission control at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. Communicating with the again crew, some comms from just the core here that in closeout team is there at SpaceX, just right outside of California, working communicating on opening that hatch for them. Again, they're just letting them know still inside of the Dragon spacecraft, and you can see them just right outside of the hatch, so they can't see what's going on opening that hatch for them. Again, they're still inside of the Dragon spacecraft, and you can see them. They might be hearing some so they can't see what's going on outside of the vehicle. The closeout team working on opening that hatch is there. This allows them to just know and understand what to expect. That those noises that they're hearing. The closeout team is expected, and that they can anticipate that hatch. This allows them to just know and understand what to expect. That those noises that they're hearing is expected, and that they can anticipate that hatch opening here shortly. And the crew there using their pads that they would use during their flight, those tablets, and the crew their procedures using their pads. If they're wondering where during their flight, what they need to work through, what's coming up next in the procedure, they can look there on their procedures, so they can very easily. If they were also taking some selfies earlier, what they need to work through, what's coming up next in the procedure, they can look there on those tablets. What's leading up to there very easily. They were also taking some selfies earlier. Maybe some good memories.
Gotta make the most of it, that's for sure.
Up to their future
and
launch to the
two of
International
the
Space
crew
Station.
members there on your screen are veteran astronauts that
Gotta
they've
make the
flown
most of it, that's
previously,
for sure.
Anne McClain as well as Takuya Onishi have both been to the International Space Station before, so I'm sure they're familiar
astronauts that they've flown
with
previously,
launch scrubs and all the procedures and processes that go
Takuya
into
Onishi
that. Have both been to the International Space Station before, so I'm sure they're familiar.
Again, this is exactly why
with launch scrubs and all the procedures and
countdown.
processes
We
that
have
go into
automated
that.
checks. Again, this is exactly automated checks. We have manual checks. We have a countdown. We have mission control checks here in Hawthorne that monitor the vehicle. We have automated checks. We have manual checks. All of its systems to make sure that everything is good. Mission control. We have a team here monitoring all the ground systems to ensure everything is good. Again, if we are not 100% sure that everything is good, that safe team monitoring that we can launch safely and reliably, to ensure everything is good. We will call hold again on if we are not 100% sure that we will wait until we are ready. That we can launch safely and reliably. Backup opportunity. We will call hold on the next day or two. A launch just like we did today.
Again, there are several other opportunities this week. The earliest
another backup opportunity
tomorrow, about 24 hours from now. But again, waiting for confirmation. Again, there are several other opportunities this week. The earliest they will schedule that next opportunity, whether it's tomorrow or sometime later this week. Again, waiting for confirmation from the NASA. There on your screen, you can see the closeout team. It looks like they will schedule that next opportunity, whether it's tomorrow or sometime later this week or even next. And there on your screen, you can see the hatch is open. The crew will begin exiting one by one with some assistance from those ground teams. And once the hatch just by the number of people you can see on your screen there, you can see one by one with some assistance just how big of an operation it is to launch people. Just by the number of people you can see on your screen there, you can see just how big of an operation it is to launch people.
SpaceX, stand by for side hatch open. And Dragon SpaceX, hatch is open, so we'll be handing you off to the closeout team for egress. Sorry we couldn't get you off today. We'll speak to you soon and look forward to trying it again. And Dragon SpaceX, hatch is open, so we'll be handing you off to the closeout team for egress. Sorry we couldn't get you off today. We'll speak to you soon and look forward to trying it again.
I know it was a lot of work to try to get it to go, but like I said earlier, we'll be ready with equipment. We see the closeout crew. Great working with you today. Kudos to the whole team. I know it was a lot of work to try to get it to go, but like I said earlier, we'll be ready.
And there you heard some nice words from NASA astronaut, the commander of Crew-10, Anne McClain, talking about the scrub, you heard some nice words from NASA astronaut. Grateful they are for all of the Anne McClain that they've put into today's opportunities, the scrub, but also as they planned. But again, there are grateful they are for all of the teams that will be available, put into today's opportunities, work through those ground issues as they planned. But again, for the clamp arms, and again, we also heard and saw on our screen a moment ago that the hatch for the Dragon's those ground issues on the hydraulic system has now been opened, so those closeout team and again, we also heard and saw on our screen a moment ago that the hatch removing the crew members from their seat one by one, endurance, and then from there has now been opened, so those closeout team members will begin removing the crew members from their seat one by one. And then from there, the crew will go down and get into their vehicles and be taken back to crew quarters.
When that hatch opened, they waved to the closeout team. This is a team that they've been working with for many, many months. So they're very familiar with each other. They waved to the closeout team. This is a team that they've been working with a launch like this. Several teams familiar with each other. Make us Anna, you were mentioning like this happened. There's a lot of teams involved. The closeout team with a launch like this, crew side by side. Teams obviously the crew itself. Make a crew launch like this happen. Operations team, the closeout team, train working with the crew side by side. Then there's obviously the crew itself. Training with NASA for the science operations team that helps train the crew with a mission like launch today. Then there's a lot of training. It's okay that we're not going today. We will go several teams that are involved. Every single one of those teams is ready to go.
But we also have it's okay SpaceX that we're not going today. We will go as well as NASA's mission control team. Every single one of those for the International Space Station in Houston, Texas, and we also have as well as the launch control team here in Hawthorne, as well as NASA's mission control team to launch for the International Space Station in Houston, Texas, as well as the launch control team. We've been launching people now to the International Space Station for almost 25 years with that to launch humans to space successfully. Anniversary of continuous human presence coming up later. Then launching people now to the International Space Station for almost 25 years with that 25th NASA astronauts have been flying with SpaceX for the past 5 years this year. Since Demo 2 in May of 2020. And the NASA astronauts have been flying with SpaceX for the past rotational crew mission, making the 11th May of 2020. SpaceX. And this will be the 10th rotational crew mission, making the 11th. They're also intricately timed, so the crews typically spend around 6 months aboard the International Space Station. And those crew rotations, so they're also intricately timed. Up there is Crew 9, which typically spend around 6 months aboard the International Space Station once they get up there. Space Station. So the once crew rotation then up there is Crew 9, which is the dock to the International Space Station. They'll complete that handover period with the International Space Station. Crew 9 makes their way back. Crew 10 launches, and then there on your screen you can see the International Space Station. Crew 10 crew members period with Crew 9 working to get Crew 9 makes their way back to Earth, and then there on your screen you can see entry suits. Crew 10 crew members. Yeah, these suits are intravehicular. Their hands suits. They are designed out of their launch inside of the spacecraft only. These suits are intravehicular. The astronauts they are designed for. It's almost like they have a mini of the spacecraft AC system. They help, but it also helps the astronauts protect the crew in case of a cabin depressurization. It's almost like they have a mini during a AC launch. System. But it also helps. They are. Protect the crew in case of a cabin depressurization during a I mean, the suits are kind of like a miniature spacecraft, but they won't be getting out of their suits now, but they are just getting their hands free so that they can help a miniature spacecraft climb out of their seats and out of the spacecraft. But they are just getting their hands free so that they can typically once safely climb out of their seats safely inserted into orbit. The crew will often get out of those suits for the phasing ride as they catch up to the International Space Station to get inserted into orbit. The crew will often get out of those suits. Sometimes a lengthy ride. If we ride as they catch up to the shorter end for phasing, a little bit more about 10 hours to get to the International Space Station. Can be sometimes a lengthy ride. If we had launched today, it was actually on the shorter end for phasing. It would have been about 10 hours. There we see a live look of Launch Complex 39A in Florida. It looks like the sun has fully set. And we now have one of the crew members a live look of Launch Complex 39A in Florida. It looks like the Dragon Endurance spacecraft, another following. And we now have one of the crew members right behind, and it looks like those are the two mission specialists of the Dragon Endurance spacecraft, another JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov behind, and it looks like those are the two mission specialists for Crew-10. The Dragon spacecraft followed Onishi there by NASA astronaut Nichole Ayers. They are now safely, last but not least, making her way out. The Dragon spacecraft followed is there by NASA astronaut Nichole Anne McClain. And then, last but not least, making her way out
to be able to stretch their legs after the last few hours sitting in the Dragon spacecraft. They are now. Must be nice for them to be able to stretch their legs after the last few hours access arm sitting in the Dragon spacecraft. They are now currently in the White Room. And again, the closeout team is there to help assist the crew, make sure they, as they were egressing the spacecraft, that they didn't damage their. And again, the closeout team is there to help assist the crew, make sure they, as they were while they're in their spacesuits, that they didn't damage some pretty hefty spacesuits, so helmets might not be and making sure that easy the crew is safe while they're in their spacesuits. Like normal clothes, some pretty hefty spacesuits, so might not be. They're also going to make sure that the vehicle easy to walk around is safe before they exit the crew arm there as well to help with. They're also going to make sure that the vehicle now making their way down the crew access arm before they exit the spacecraft that they just egressed or exited. It looks like they're now making their way. The scrub was down the crew access arm. About 45 minutes left in the launch spacecraft that they just egressed or exited following that launch scrub liftoff. Again, the scrub was that scrub was due to about 45 minutes left in the hydraulics issue when we were targeting on the transporter booster liftoff and 96 atop. That scrub was clamp arms hold ground. The Falcon 9 in place and typically retract transporter or terminal count of the Falcon 9-6 atop. And those clamp arms hold the Falcon 9 in place and typically retract in terminal count. And the crew will now begin to make their way down to the base of the launch pad, where they will then get into the vehicles that brought them here several hours ago. Their way down and return to crew quarters. The base of the launch pad, where they will then back at crew quarters, they'll likely have some brought them here several hours ago. SpaceX and NASA teams and return to crew opportunities. Once they're back at crew quarters, they'll likely have some meetings with some of the SpaceX and NASA teams to talk future opportunities for their launch. Crew-10 members making their way downstairs. This is where they will get access to the elevator that will take them down. Crew-10 members making their way downstairs to their Teslas that will get access to the elevator that will take them down the tower to the base of the tower to their Teslas that will take them back to their crew quarters. Looks like several members of the closeout team are following right behind them. Looks like several members of the elevator that will take them following right behind them. Down to their vehicles, and then they will drive off back to crew quarters. Getting into the elevator, Florida, and there you're seeing a live look of down to their vehicles standing by for them. Drive off again. Back to crew quarters. They've been standing by since the closeout Florida arrived. Seeing a live look of those 40-45 minutes vehicles ago. Standing by for them. Again, after the launch scrub was been standing by since the closeout team arrived, that we had to wait for the closeout team to make their way back, since they had already left after the launch scrub was called. Being called once there were a few minutes that we had to wait for the closeout team to make their way back, since they had already left the launch pad. Crew access arm and began safing the hatch. The closeout team made their way back, egressed the crew. They then Crew-10 went up to the crew access arm and began safing the hatch. Nichole Ayers, JAXA astronaut
Takuya Onishi and egress the crew, the and there you see them all on your screen. NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nichole Ayers, JAXA making their way down. They've made their way down and are going to enter. And there you see them all on your screen. Leave the launch pad and go back to Cobertura shortly.
Yeah,
making their way down. They've made their way down and are going to enter into their vehicles and leave the launch pad and go back to Cobertura shortly.
They have the ability to attach their umbilicals to help keep cool air flowing through their suits. Once they enter those Teslas, they have the ability to make their way back down to their crew quarters where cool air flowing through their suits. They will stay quarantined until once they enter those Teslas. Next launch they'll make their way back down you can see to their crew quarters where ingressing they will stay quarantined until and they have their next launch opportunity, and there you can see the crew now ingressing SpaceX those vehicles next to mission control. And that's going to wrap it up for us. We're going to send it back over to Daryl at KSC. SpaceX to follow the crew the rest of the next mission control. Again, it's unfortunate that we did not over to Daryl at KSC. Always better to be safe to make sure that crew the rest of the way.
Yep, and we'll it's unfortunate that we did not updates today, but NASA's blog.
Always better to be
the
safe.
Commercial Crew program as well as our social media accounts once we have that new launch time. We'll ready to share with the world. But for now, we'll on NASA's blog wrap it up here in the Commercial Crew program as well as our social media accounts once we have our next launch attempt for the ready to share with the world. But for now, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here in Hawthorne, and we'll see you again soon once we have
thank you both, ladies,
our next launch
us
attempt for the Crew-10 mission. And with that, we'll hand it back over to Daryl at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
And into their waiting vehicles. All right, thank you both, ladies, for walking us through. For those of you just now tuning in, the astronauts from their spacecraft happy to be catching up on what's happening tower and into their waiting vehicles. We're live at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. For those of you just now tuning in, Crew-10 happy to be catching up on what's happening. A launch attempt. We are live at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. They were scheduled to launch with T0 make their way back from 50 launch attempt p.m. Eastern Complex 39A. However, the launch scheduled to launch with T0 less than an hour before that and 57 due to an apparent hydraulic problem with the launch pad 39A. However, the Falcon 9 hold-down clamp less than an hour before that system due to an apparent hydraulic problem with the launch pad 39 to the Falcon 9 hold-down clamp arm system, the system that holds the rocket NASA and SpaceX teams to the decision strong back call off the launch for today. There you see the crew along with the closeout crew. And so NASA and SpaceX crew of 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut to call off the launch leaving their rocket. There you see the crew along with the closeout crew, our crew of 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut leaving their rocket. So of course, Jessica, another day. The understanding is, with astronauts that they're always ready, but they're of course Jessica feeling some disappointment.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a bit of a letdown when you think you're going to space and you don't. I didn't have that scrub experience myself, but obviously it is quite common for a lot of astronauts. I mean, it's a bit of a letdown. I think really they're just mostly used to it. I didn't have that previous experience myself, but like we mentioned earlier, Anne often talks about being humble and knowing that really they're just mostly going to fail in from the least predictable of ways. So you really just like we mentioned earlier, Anne often talks about, and that's what happened here today. Knowing that your equipment it's going to fail in something that least predictable ways. But so you really just always need to launch when we're ready and when we're safe. And that's what happened here today. Despite a pretty flawless lead up, it was something that we maybe they'll have a little bit more time to relax. We will launch when we're ready, get ready when we're safe, and of course that's always the most important thing. We're going to continue tracking the astronauts' so maybe they'll have a little bit more time to relax and get ready for the next broadcast.
But we're going to continue tracking the astronauts' progress back see the astronauts making it back from and then we will close out the broadcast crew quarters safely. We want to make sure that you, the viewer, see the astronauts making it back from the launch complex.
Anne was talking earlier about appreciating the home-cooked food, and we have an incredible staff there. And then it's a little bit like going home. So, hey, another day of that. Earlier about probably some other family visit, the home-cooked food, and we have an incredible staff there at the now that they have all the annoying tasks. Hey, another day of that they probably some other family visit yesterday. They'll find a way to make good use of that time. now that they have all the annoying taskless stuff out of the way that they thought they had to complete before yesterday. From what I've heard, things do stay pretty busy right up until the last minute here. So, it is probably still a little bit stressful. You're trying to reply to those last emails. From what I've heard, things send those last text messages right up until up to date and close out. So, different questions that people are coming to you with. You're trying to reply to those last emails. This could be a nice relaxing day for text messages and keep people up to date and close out.
Well, it's certainly beautiful outside, as you can see here.
So
as we,
this could be a nice relaxing day for them tomorrow.
Late twilight. Well, it's certainly beautiful outside, as you can see here. As we, it was a beautiful day all day. Late twilight, pleasant temperatures outside. Wednesday, March 12th. Boats were going by the launch pad. It was a quintessential temperatures outside Florida launch. Boats were going by the launch pad. It was a quintessential
This is that kind of scene that I was talking about earlier when the cars were going in the other direction, and now at night it's even more dramatic with all of the lights. This is that kind of scene and the that I was talking about earlier when the cars were going in the other direction, and now at night it's even more dramatic with all of the lights sitting in silence, and the entourage. Will they play the same songs on the next opportunity? I wonder if they're playing their theme music. Maybe not. Maybe this time they're kind of sitting in silence. Will they play the same songs on the next opportunity? That's another answer I'll have to find out.
Yeah. I mean, it's an opportunity to change up your playlist if you've got the time to do so. Historically speaking, when crews back in shuttle days were faced with delays that they knew were going to be long, they had use of the astronaut beach house. Crews back in shuttle days, there were opportunities to spend a little more time out there and be long. Families were on hand, so astronaut beach house. And
yeah, there could be. We still do use the beach house in this pre-launch quarantine period where the astronauts will go out there with their families, and it's a really nice. Yeah, there could be. We still do use the beach house in this setting. Pre-launch quarantine period where the astronauts will go out there with their families, and it's a really nice vibe. That's pretty relaxing, idyllic. I'm not sure whether or not they'll get another opportunity to do that. Nice access to the beach and to the ocean, and it just has that real beach house vibe. That's pretty relaxing. So I'm not sure whether or not they'll get another opportunity to do that.
Most about the beach house location
always
is
a good option. Maybe a final run down the beach.
It's the house. But I love the way Florida most about that beach house location. Anything is, came the solitude. It's so natural. It's the house. The only really significant thing that you see is you see towering launch pads off in the distance.
But we like that.
But that's right. Around here we like that. The only really significant thing that you see is you see towering launch pads off in the distance.
But we like that.
But that's right. Around here we like that. But it's so pristine. There's so much solitude out there. It's national, so isolated.
Yeah.
It's so natural, secure.
Those sea oats waving in the breeze between the beach and the beach house.
There's so much
actually, my parents had a place just a little bit further up the coast here, so same kind of familiar coastline. And my mom was always commenting on sea oats and how beautiful they were, and it's so nice further up the coast here. So same kind of familiar coastline, and my mom was always commenting on the sea oats and how beautiful they were. They had when they were out there earlier this week natural elements and get into a relaxing kind of state of. They don't get a chance to go out there and relax. That's one thing about the ocean, right? There's always just something so relaxing about. They had when they were out there earlier this week and get into a relaxing kind of state of mind. That's the one thing about the ocean, right? There's always just something so relaxing about looking at the water.
When you're out there gazing, it is so true over the ocean. Peace and tranquility is just what the doctor ordered. It's hard to not have that wash over you when crews are tired from out there gazing a long day over the ocean. And launch operations is just what the doctor ordered. But we don't know if that's where they're headed. Crews are tired. We should caveat because a long day of the decision has yet to be made about when the next opportunity. But we don't know if that's where they're headed at this time. We should caveat whether or not they're. The decision has yet to be made about that's required when the next opportunity whether or not they have enough data to move forward with whether or not there will be some. Of course, we'll have updates for you that's required to our social media channels. They have enough data to move forward with flight rationale as we. Of course, we'll have updates for you. Stay tuned to our other direction social media channels, the vehicle assembly building, and right by our studios here. Drive by the other direction away from the vehicle assembly building and right by our studios here at the Launch 39 complex. If you were commander of this crew, what would you do?
What would I do with the free time?
If you were
I think I would try to do what I was saying earlier, really use it to relax. Because
what would I do
know
with
myself
free time?
And as I was mentioning, I've heard a lot of reports from the crews being pretty busy up until the last earlier. So really use it to
I think
relax.
I would sort of take advantage of the fact that all of those annoying things are done,
pretty busy up until the last moment.
So
not to look at your email
again,
not
sort
to get
of
back
take
on your phone
advantage of the fact that all of those sort of annoying things are done,
from those devices.
Perhaps you know I know for me
not
when
to look at your email again,
I might have
not
to get back on your phone at all,
going camping and hiking.
You already
sort of
when I'm on a long trip without any technology, without my cell phone, I find it to be
places in nature,
incredibly
going
invigorating,
hiking, and
when I get a lot of recuperation without any technology, without my cell phone, I find it to be
so I would probably not be in any rush to turn my phone back on.
And can get a lot of
and that's the other thing,
out.
Things are pretty planned.
Yeah,
like you said, we don't know for sure.
So I would
probably not be in any rush
to
turn my phone back on.
And they have to remain,
and that's the other thing,
in their
things are pretty
quarantine.
planned.
So
like you said, we don't know for sure when the next attempt
I would probably
will be,
just
but
try to
there
relax,
certainly
maybe
will be a
plan, and they have to remain, of
see how it
course,
all
in
plays
their
out.
quarantine. So
could be some great crew bonding opportunities.
I would probably
just
try to relax, maybe avoid technology, and see how it all plays out.
Could be some great crew bonding opportunities, I think, for them.
You're watching the crew from NASA SpaceX's Crew-10 making their way back to astronaut crew quarters at the ONC. You're watching the crew from NASA SpaceX's Crew-10 making their way back to astronaut crew quarters at the ONC. The caravan going down NASA Causeway. It's about a 20-minute drive from the launch pad to the crew quarters. They came in on 2 lanes. They're going out on 3 lanes. The caravan going down NASA Causeway accommodate big, heavy space hardware when it travels. They came in on 2 lanes around the Kennedy Space Center. Lanes. Those 3 lanes are to accommodate big, heavy space hardware when it travels around the Kennedy Space Center. Fun little fact.
Certainly a great time of year to be launching, though. This weather has been phenomenal, and it's so pleasant to just be outside, which is not always the case here in Florida. Certainly a great time of year to be launching.
Yeah, you were asking me
this weather has been
prior
phenomenal.
To coming out here, like, how's the weather?
It's so
like,
pleasant
oh, man.
to just be outside, which is not always
it's so
the
good
case
from our
here
previous
in Florida.
launch coverage. Yeah, you were asking me. I did prior to coming out here, like, how's the weather? First of all, it was overnight.
Yep.
Second of all, we were outside. Previous, I believe bugs were a factor.
Yeah.
Collecting did quite Crew-7. Quite a few of them overnight.
Yep.
On the launch we were outside. I believe bugs were a factor.
Yeah.
Collecting quite. This is why people. Quite a few of them on the year. It's the high on the launch desk for Florida. But yeah, outside now this is the place to be. This is why people vacation this time of year. It's the high season we have for Florida. Just about 6 to 7 months of summer. This is the place to be here. So I cherish these days in February and March. Have just about 6 to 7 months of summer.
Yeah, we know how that feels in Houston too.
Oh yes, you do.
We've been pretty fortunate with the weather there lately as well.
I cherish these days in February and March.
Yeah, we know how that feels in Houston too.
Oh yes, you do.
We've been pretty fortunate with the weather there lately as well. Hopefully the friends and family that are here as well will be able to stick around for a little while and see what's going to happen. That's always something,
hopefully
when we have these constant changes that can kind of become a stressor for us. Be able to stick around for a little while. It's difficult for people to change their schedules. That's and always something, when we have these constant changes that can kind of become a stressor for us. Is that that happens difficult already to change their schedules and their time off work. February plan. So we always feel for that.
See how it all works, but
that
we will
happened
be here
supporting them
with
and
the
and
change that they have.
our colleagues at NASA
February
plan
in it until
the end for sure. So we're here to support
See
them
how
all
it all
the way
works,
and,
but
and
we
send
will
them
be
off
here
eventually supporting
space.
them and
100%.
our colleagues at NASA are in it until the end for sure. So we're here to support them all the way and send them off eventually to space.
100%.
I feel like we're in the car right there with them with this view, don't we?
And we are. I wonder if they're putting in their order to the fine
I feel like
cooks
we're in
and
the
chefs
car right there with them with this view,
crew
don't
quarters
we?
for dinner tonight, because it's been a while since putting in their order to the
absolutely.
fine
Probably that will be definitely a bright spot on the horizon because their meals in Dragon, there's no way to heat up the food, so it has to be something. Probably you do get some choice in what you can bring along. A bright spot on the horizon because their meals
bring along some of the
elements of our standard heat menu that we have on ISS and some other kind of
get some choice in
varieties as well.
But there's no way to heat it, so you have to bring along some of the elements of our standard food menu that we have on ISS.
At least they will have a hot
kind of off-the-shelf varieties as well,
but there's no way to heat it, so you have to have something that
a little bit
good
less
at the
fun
ambient
when your
temperature.
food's not
so
floating.
At least they will have a hot meal tonight,
There's
which they
that fun
wouldn't have had
factor.
otherwise on Dragon.
It's
Absolutely.
room temperature, but capturing
a little
it out
bit
of
less
midair.
fun when your food's not floating.
It's okay to play
though
with
I
your
have
food
to say,
in space.
Don't tell your
There's
kids.
that fun factor.
Absolutely.
It's room temperature, but that's not capturing it out of midair as parents
it's okay
of
to play with
toddlers
your
are
food in
currently
space.
doing.
Don't tell your kids. Exactly.
That's
it would
not
be a different
something
ballgame
that
with a
you and I,
toddler
as
if
parents
all the
of
food
toddlers
was
are
floating.
currently doing.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Exactly.
Wouldn't that be like such an impetus to get them?
It would
to
be a
eat?
different ballgame with a toddler.
Toddlers in
if
space
all
would
the food
would be
floating.
cute,
Oh,
but
imagine that.
Imagine that. No doubt Wouldn't that be like such an impetus to get them to eat?
Toddlers in space would be cute, but very messy.
Oh, no doubt about that.
Well, I know that would be top on my list when you asked what I would be doing if I were the commander and had a scrub. And that would be definitely some squeezing and cuddling of my toddler. Well, I know that would be top on my
No
list
doubt.
when you asked what I would be doing
You've
if
got
I were the
a
commander
young
and
one
had
at a
scrub.
precious
And that would be
age,
definitely
as do I.
Some squeezing and cuddling of my toddler.
Enjoying no doubt every moment of that. You've got a young one at a precious age,
would get
as
a little
do
confusing
I.
for them, though.
Yeah, I know, right? Enjoying,
right.
Especially at that age where it's difficult to completely understand.
Would get a little confusing for them, though.
Mom or dad is yeah, I know, right. Well, we have arrived at that age where
back
it's
where we
difficult
started
to completely understand.
astronaut crew quarters.
How what your
Going
mom or
doors
dad is
open up.
saying. And there you see our. Well, we have arrived. Crew-10 crew members.
Back where we started.
I'm waving to somebody who's out there. Golden doors open up.
Looking slightly less
And there
enthusiastic.
you see our Crew-10 crew members. But that's okay. They will fly. To somebody who's out there
eventually.
Yep. Looking slightly less enthusiastic.
It's just a matter of figuring out when. But that's okay. They will fly as they hustle into the doors. This we know. It's just a matter of figuring out when. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us today. Into the doors. We really appreciate you joining us for this launch attempt of NASA and SpaceX.
Well, folks, that's
Crew-10
going to do it for
the International
us today.
Space Station. Thank you so much,
We
Jessica,
really appreciate
for
you
being
joining
here
us
with us on
for
this
this
first
launch
attempt. You'll be with us on the next one. We greatly appreciate that as well. Launch to the International
thank
Space
you.
Station.
It is a
Thank you
pleasure,
so much,
really an
Jessica,
honor to be
for
here supporting
being
my
here with us on
colleagues
this
on
first
their
attempt.
journey to space.
You'll be
And
with
this
us
is
on
all
the
just
next
part
one.
of the
We greatly
journey.
appreciate that
Everyone's
as well.
different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Just
It
to
is
recap
a
really
pleasure,
quickly,
really
we
an
had
honor to be here
an
supporting
issue
my
with some ground
colleagues
equipment,
on their
the
journey to
hydraulic
space,
equipment
and this
that,
is all just part of the
controls
journey.
the clamp
Everyone's
arms
different.
on
Absolutely.
the Falcon 9
Just to recap really quickly, we
Rector
had
holds the rocket issue with some ground equipment.
The pad,
the
hydraulic
equipment
equipment
that
4.5 minutes
controls the
There was an
clamp
issue,
arms
and
on
the
they're
Falcon
look at
9
that
look at
transporter
the
Rector,
and then
holds the
decide
rocket
whether
the
or not
pad
to
it releases about
have
4.5
some work to do, or
minutes
maybe some further
data
issue,
reviews
and
before they
they're
decide
gonna
on
look
launch
at that.
it.
So
Look at the data,
make sure
and
you
then decide
stay tuned to
whether or not
updates
to
that we will
have
have
some work
for
to
you,
do, or maybe some further
just
data
head to
review
nasa.gov
before they decide on a launch date.
blog.
So
/
make sure you
Crew-10
stay tuned
see
at the bottom of your
updates,
screen there.
that we
we'll
will
have all the
have
information
for
you need to know.
just head to
nasa.gov /
on the next
launch
blogs
attempt.
/
For everybody here at
Crew-10,
NASA and
see it at the bottom of
SpaceX,
your
I'm
screen
Daryl
there.
Nail, Jessica
We'll
Meir.
have all the
We'll
information
see
you
you
need
next
to
time.
know
once we have that available on the next launch attempt. For everybody here at NASA and SpaceX, I'm Daryl Nail for Jessica Meir. We'll see you next time.
out.